Welcome to this Sunday show where we're going to be comparing your options to position yourself in the region that I deal with, where I help my clients with. That is New Europe. So countries like Poland, Moldova, here in Ukraine, what I refer to as a new Europe Baltics, so Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Also can be Kazakhstan, just off the Central Asian steppes. Yes, a small piece of Kazakh territory is geographically in Europe, so I include it and I help my clients with going there. In fact, I'm hoping to get back there very, very soon to Almaty and Astana in Kazakhstan. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Conor Klein, and I help my high-level clients with leveraging lifestyle arbitrage in this region to gain an advantage. And in general, I have this Sunday show. It's been going for this stage, maybe almost 3 months here on the Sunday, where we dive deep into a topic. I will give a presentation, and you can drop your comments and your questions in the comment section down below, and we'll come to the Q&A probably in around 30 or 40 minutes when I've gone through the housekeeping and presentation. So as you can see, we're going to get a very good overview today on these countries, what it's like to go and spend time in them. This is not a passport bro region. It is not popular with that particular demographic. Maybe after this Russia-Ukraine war is over, they will try to float back to Ukraine and maybe further east. But for now, they are focusing on Latin America, Southeast Asia, and at times Africa as well. So here we deal with coming to spend time in these countries and how you can position yourself so that you're able to leverage the opportunities here so that you basically can gain a huge advantage. And that can be to do with business, relocation, your dating life, and quality of life in general. So with the intro already out of the way, I will take a look here at one or two points that came up on the previous live stream, and I'll just deal with those first. Last week, if you were watching it, I was asked about Georgia, and there was something that was slipping my mind that was important to highlight that is often ignored, and that is the fact that there is no double taxation treaty between Georgia and the United States. So that can be a problem if you're American and you move to Georgia because you see the headline tax has been very low, but you don't have a double taxation treaty with the United States. So in theory, you could be taxed twice on your income. Not that you're actually going to get taxed much of it in Georgia itself, but it wouldn't mean that you would be then able to legally avoid certain taxes in the US. You need to be careful of that and take proper tax advice. They do have double taxation treaties with a lot of European countries. So that is something that often is omitted when experts in inverted commas are talking about relocation, especially for business in Georgia. Just be aware of that. Also, I got asked a bit about countries that are not typically in my region. So Berlin came up on the last live stream, and whether that is a good place to hang out in particular, because there are a lot of people from Central and Eastern Europe who live in Berlin. I went and I actually looked up the cities in Western Europe with the highest percentage of people with origins in the region that I deal with. So countries like Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, can also be Ukraine. I think in these, for the point from the point of view of these statistics, they also include Belarus and Russia. And the clear number one city in Western Europe with the highest percentage of people from this region who live there is Vienna, Wien. So Vienna is number one, and in fact, the clear number one. Number two, but it's not as much recent immigration, is Berlin in Germany, obviously the capital, but many those people are there for several generations. So can we really say that they have some origins in this region, but this stage they are to do with their parents and grandparents at the very least. And another city with huge and new immigration is Dublin, the capital of my home country, Ireland. So that is quite interesting. There's a huge percentage there. And a lot of Ukrainians as well have gone to Ireland since 2022, although I saw that there were some articles in the Irish media talking about how they are changing the status there. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So it might be, we might see an exodus of Ukrainians from Ireland relative at least speaking, in the next few months up to a year. Another big city is actually one that I've lived in that has a, and I was cognizant of at the time, is Munich. Got a huge diaspora from this region, and then you got London and Paris. So there you go. You have those options. It seems like the clear winner if you want to experience a lot of the culture from this region, but actually come to it, and you're living in Western Europe, and it seems like Vienna is the city to go for. And then probably after that, you say Berlin and Dublin. If you don't want to have to learn a foreign language, which is one objection that comes up sometimes. I guess you can go to my home country, Ireland, and hang out in Dublin, and then you can go to places that have lots of Romanians or Poles or Ukrainians or whatever nationality you're going for, because they are there in abundance. So just thought that was some interesting feedback or additional points to make based on our conversation last week. So let me just see who's in the house. Let me know if there's any issue with the audio. Doesn't seem like anyone's complained so far. Let me see. Uh-huh. Okay, I see Joshua. I'll answer that during the Q&A. Uh-huh. How does that affect Ukraine? Okay. I will maybe need to research that question about OPEC because it's not clear to me exactly what the implications will be so far. So on this channel, it's a bit more intellectual than many of the other, we'll say, broader lifestyle genre that is here on YouTube. We also throw in a reasonable amount, a healthy dose of geopolitics, because that is becoming more important when you're analyzing where you want to invest, where you want to spend your time, where you're going to maybe create some ties. And I do have a background in international relations. I actually studied it at officially, at the time at least, the most prestigious school in the world for IO, and had a specialization in this broader region. We called it the New Eurasia at the time, but basically it was very Moscow centric in its focus, but also dealt with Ukraine and Belarus and Central Asia to a certain extent. So I'm here to impart a little bit of, I guess, a more nuanced and unique insight into what's happening. Of course, I'm here on the ground in Ukraine at the moment. I've been here on and off probably about 50% of the time since the invasion in 2022. And I will deal with Ukraine. Is it definitely a, shall we say, alternative destination in 2026 because of the Russo-Ukrainian war? But I do have some clients who still come here. A lot of them have a significant other from Ukraine. Others are trying to get first mover advantage for the post-war era that will come at some time. And I'm actually increasingly buoyant on Ukraine's chances of emerging, by and large, victorious from this war. Certainly, Russia is not looking like it's in a good state at the moment, which is something, obviously, from my point of view, to be pretty happy about. But more on that a little bit later. The main focus of this live stream will be the other countries, and I'll deal in part with Ukraine. If you are actually interested in coming to Ukraine, and on this channel, obviously, this part, the Sunday show, is aired on YouTube, and it is obviously free to join and to partake in it. If you want to dive deeper in these topics, and maybe you're just researching the region at the moment, you can go to my insider resources. I have a link to that down below on my website. There you're going to find lots of curated playlists that will help you get up to speed on what's going on in this region, in particular from lifestyle arbitrage point of view. Also, there were some additional programs that you can invest in for learning Russian and Ukrainian. And I have my insider guides, which in particular have a hospitality section for the best, my favorite at least, cafes, restaurants, clubs, bars, shisha lounges, rooftop terraces for Ukraine. I have one guide. I have another one for Moldova. I have one for Warsaw. I have one for the New York Baltics, so Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. And I have one for classy Kazakhstan. So you can go and check all those particular resources out. Some of them you can invest in. I also have links down below to actually each of those individual guides. If you're heading off to one of those destinations pretty soon, then that will save you just a huge amount of time and research. Because, for example, in Moldova, I basically spent 4 summers going to all these places I went to. I'm not sure if we can go say hundreds, but definitely well over 100 different establishments personally to curate that list for you. If you are past the research stage and you want to strategize, then figure out the best game plan for you at this point, then you should invest in my consulting. I have a link to that down below. Go check it out, and we'll jump on a call pretty soon, and we'll narrow down exactly where you need to be going, the different steps that you need to take to achieve your goals in this region, and basically get a huge return on your investment in coming here. And if you want me to be there with you in person to help you implement it, then you can apply for my New Europe experience. That is my flagship in-person immersion, where we go for up to a week to a city in this region. Can be the cities and countries I'm going to talk about this evening. So Poland, capital Warsaw; Latvia, it's going to be Riga; Lithuania, it's going to be Vilnius and Kaunas; Tallinn in Estonia; Chisinau up the road in Moldova. Here in Ukraine, 5 cities open: Kyiv, Odesa, Lviv, Uzhhorod, and Chernovtsi. And then we have Almaty and Astana over in Kazakhstan. So there's a link down below where you can read a bit more about that, and then apply for the New Europe experience. This is rebranded from the Zara experience. If you have watched my older videos, you see that branding there. But with this Russo-Ukrainian war, we've had this slow rebranding that is now fully in place. So we are the New Europe experience these days. And in particular, if you are tempted by coming to Ukraine, I did have a live stream, I think it was 2 live streams ago, where a few of you were on this platform at the time. You expressed interest in coming. You're a little bit hesitant, and we're thinking of maybe going to Lviv in the west of Ukraine until the 17th of May. So it'll be in 2 weekends, 2 Sundays time. There is still a special Ukrainian itinerary that is possible. You need to apply, like you need to apply for the Europe experience in general. It's only if I think it's a good fit for us to work together. It's not for everybody. Then we will be coming here together to Ukraine very, very soon in the summer of 2026. So until the 17th of May, you can apply at the current plan and price. And that is something that you should take advantage of, at least apply in the next 2 weeks if you are tempted, because after that, there will be no more grandfathering in on the old New Europe experience Ukraine edition for summer 2026. So with all of that out of the way, let me see what we are going to deal with first in today's presentation. Let me just go and check to make sure there's no issues on the connectivity here. Yeah, I see some good, useful, and valuable comments coming in there, in particular Ben's experience with being in Ireland and seeing lots of Ukrainians. So it is possible that I am going to spend a little bit of time, probably won't be this summer, maybe by the autumn, maybe it's more likely to be in the winter. I will be going to some places with the Ukrainian diaspora, where there is a diaspora of Ukraine is significant. So there's a Ukrainian community, and I mightn't just limit myself to Ukrainians either. Maybe I'm going to go check out some other communities as well. Something actually I did many, many years ago. I actually went to Brazil. I used to say it's my favorite country in the world. Maybe Ukraine has replaced it in the meantime. And I went and I explored many of the different diaspora communities there. I was actually in a town called Prudentopolis, which has a Ukrainian community, and I went to the Polish community. There was actually, I guess kind of ironically, if we look at it from today's point of view, a Russian community that was originally from Siberia that I also was a guest of in southern Brazil. And there was a German community and an Italian community. So they're all places and cultures that I'm familiar with. And I speak the languages of as well, by and large, except for Polish, especially at the time I didn't speak any Polish, which was kind of a funny experience driving through the countryside and tropical in southern Brazil and seeing a Polish Catholic church kind of in the middle of nowhere, so to say, and Polish symbols everywhere, and everyone looked Polish all of a sudden. So you have those kind of places. So it mightn't be just Brazil, but I think Brazil next winter is somewhere that I'm considering returning to. So lots of maybe different content coming up also on this channel. New Europe experience, but the Brazil 2027 version. Anyways, if you're interested, I guess write me a message. Can be also here in the live stream, or you can send me an email, Conor@conorklein.com. Again, that is down below because people tend to misspell my name. So probably better off just going and copy and pasting that. So the framework that I'm going to use in today's presentation, I'm going to go from the lowest risk, easiest entry point to coming to the countries that I help my clients with. So it's part of New Europe. New Europe I'll drop the video down below where I explain how I came up with the concept. It was something in conjunction with my clients post the 2022 invasion. I think it was actually really in 2023, trying to describe the region that I was then helping my clients with. Basically, if you're new to this channel, I had, well, first of all, you go way back in the day, and sometimes people even bring it up. They say, hey, Conor, I've been following you for a decade because they were interested in language learning. I used to originally on YouTube have a very nerdy language vlog and then a website to help people learn languages. Most of that content, I guess some of it is probably still there on YouTube. A super geek. I shot it with the original iPhone 5 that I have. We're going back that far, so I guess it's over 10 years ago. And someone brought up in the comments about Transnistria, because I have a recent video from Moldova. You should go and check that down below if you missed it. It's about a half hour long. It's probably the most positive video about Moldova on YouTube. But someone put there a comment saying, hey, Conor, why don't you ever talk about Pridnestrovia, or Transnistria is known as in English? And I was saying, well, actually, that's interesting because I did originally have a vlog in inverted commas. I shot it on my iPhone 5. It's definitely over 10 years ago, maybe even be 12 years ago. But it was such crap quality at a certain point, I just deleted it because it was shot on my iPhone. I had no idea what it was doing whatsoever. But yes, I have been there too. Transnistria at the time, it was not really a travel vlog. I just had one or two videos like that. And eventually pivoted into helping normally men from North and South America, Western Europe, lots of different countries, in fact, with going and partying in Belarus and here in Ukraine. Russia also took one trip out to St. Petersburg in Russia. That was in 2018, 2019, right up to the pandemic that started in 2020, which then started to limit how much people could travel. So during that period, I had the number one channel here on YouTube for life, a high level of life here in Ukraine, a premium kind of single man's vlog about living here. I wasn't actually single for, I think, most of it or any of it. Myself personally, I was in a relationship. So I think starting from early 2020, right around the pandemic, against the pandemic, that was one of the positives that came out of it for me. So that was the focus of the channel. I actually did not leave Ukraine, not even for one day between 2020 and the day two of this invasion. So I left on the 25th of February 2022, came out. I actually came back pretty soon afterwards. It was about a month later because I needed to bring stuff to Ukraine to help people around the front lines and who were here farther away. I went to Mukachevo, so it was just over the border from Hungary. It was just easier to send the stuff from there than trying to send it internationally. I think we sent one package internationally. It took over a month to arrive at the time. All that's been resolved since, and now with Nova Poshta, you can send stuff and it's here pretty quickly. But in those days of chaos in early 2022, that was the case. I then pivoted to helping my clients. Obviously, there was no one really interested in relocating and coming to Ukraine at that point, at least with this invasion. So I was helping my existing clients basically with the alternative route. That's why we have many of the places that I'm going to discuss today, because I've gone to all of these cities and countries I'm going to talk about with my clients. And most of them have been guys who've been watching me prior to the 2022 invasion. They were thinking the same thing. What do we do now? So basically I started up in Moldova, which is right beside us here in Odesa, because when I got back to Ukraine, more semi-permanently, shall we say, in the summer of 2022, that was the one question that I was getting asked. And I was like, okay, well, Chisinau, just up the road, is pretty similar to Ukraine, but it doesn't have a war, at least at the moment. I was thinking really at that stage, yeah, for now. And so I started helping my clients go there. And then after by request and with a lot of discussion and back and forth between us, we went, as I said, to all the places that we're going to discuss. So it's all been researched by me. And we are going, that's why you've seen this evolution in the channel, right? If you look back at my older videos, I'm talking a lot more about Ukraine and Belarus. If you look back to the earlier videos from 2018, we'll say to about 2022. And since then, it is focused on a different part of Europe, but Ukraine is still here. And I did have one vlog, or a couple of vlogs even, from Moldova back in the day. So we're going to start with the lowest kind of, I guess, risk, but probably the lowest upside as a result. And then we're going to go all the way to the higher risk and the higher upside, depending on your risk profile and there's not like there's one country, one city that's like kind of the El Dorado in this region. It really is individual. Quite often, I think nearly all the time on my consulting calls, the client who they end up deciding that their priority should be a different city to the one that they expected me to recommend. That's why it's of such huge value to go and jump on the consulting call. Again, there's a link down below for that. And that's because even with this free content and obviously provides a huge amount of value here, getting down to a bespoke plan for you and really drilling down to what you want to achieve and how you're going to leverage lifestyle arbitrage doesn't mean that basically by coming here, some things that because you're coming from, say, Western Europe or North America, normally it's because things are better value for money here, or if you're a single guy, there are better dating options, but you must have a plan in place in order to succeed. You need to position yourself. It's not like you can just show up as a weekend warrior and it's 1996 here and everything is going to be pence on the pound or cents on the dollar, cents on the euro. All the women just want to flee. This is something that hasn't existed for a long time in this region. So it is still the best part of Europe to come to get this arbitrage opportunity, but you must position yourself correctly. And it is very dependent on what kind of personality you have, what are your goals, and also your risk tolerance. Because obviously, I'm sitting here in Odessa in Ukraine, that suits a certain particular profile, but it's not going to fit others amongst my clients. So we're going to look at risk tolerance. So obviously, very low to very high. We're going to look at the time horizon where you're looking for short term lifestyle versus long term strategic positioning. And obviously, just your budget obviously will make a certain difference. Everywhere is going to be better value for money than being in, say, London or Paris or in New York or in Dubai. Maybe there are some exceptional, unique, top end experiences that you can get in those cities that you couldn't get in this region. Fair enough. But outside of that, things should be, no matter what your budget, be better value overall. But it is, if I look at my clients, there are differences. I think if you're into the centimillionaire to billionaire category, then maybe value for money on anything unless it's a major investment like buying property, it still would be obviously very attractive to come here. Maybe outside of everything, I don't think my clients who fall into that category really care where the bottle of champagne at the club costs. $500 or $1,000 at the end of the day. It's not really that big a deal, although they do comment on it. I've noticed. I think the real sweet spot is if you are like a millionaire all the way up to centimillionaire, so decamillionaire. There you can really leverage the opportunities here. I did have one client who, was living this kind of, I guess, New York lifestyle of being a millionaire, and he was always explaining like how much the property they bought in Kyiv would have cost them in New York City, and the differences and how he actually preferred. This is obviously prior to 2022. He preferred living in Kyiv than being in a U.S. city in the first place. So, and then on top of that, it was like 20-30% basically the cost for the apartment, so he could live that baller lifestyle. Well, he could live a baller lifestyle anyways, but now he could live a super baller lifestyle as a result. And yeah, he was one of my clients who was super well positioned as well. So also, if you're on an income level that's below that, you're still going to be able to take advantage of the opportunities here and the upgrade in lifestyle, again, as long as you have a plan in place, up to, well, down to a certain level. That's why I say this region is not for passport bros. So if you're looking for living on $500 a month, this is probably not the region for you. Even Ukraine, I guess in Ukraine you could live on $500 a month because it's probably about almost half the price of being in Warsaw, for example. But again, we have the war here, so that would be for the very high risk of people who live super cheap. But I don't know what kind of lifestyle you're going to have here on $500 a month. It maybe those kind of people would be better off going to Southeast Asia or Latin America. So if you're got a budget that's going to be, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 plus, then you can adapt accordingly. But again, just to reemphasize, this something that always comes up in the comments of my videos. I always get guys who identify as passport bros. Hey, can I come as a passport bro to Croatia? Can I listen? You missed the boat there. You might have been able to do that 10 years ago. I don't think you're really a passport bro in the sense that you're. Maybe there's some people who actually identify as passport bros and coming to this region, but they're normally in the millionaire class, so I don't understand how they can really be passport bros in that sense. The very wealthy ones, but in general, the passport pro kind of stereotype, or the content creators that I see in general promoting that kind of lifestyle, they are looking for super, super cheap. Definitely, they're not looking for something that's going to cost them like over 3,000-4,000 even per month as a lifestyle. Definitely not over 5,000. So it's not the region that comes. We're looking for super cheap as a place, or because most passport pros are single guys, where there's desperate women who just be interested because of your passport. By and large, that doesn't exist so much anymore. Maybe here in Ukraine, because of the cost of living differential, maybe it's a little bit true, and I think it was definitely the case prior to 2022. I'm not sure if we had the term passport bros at the time. I don't think so. But that kind of profile used to call them the digital Daves, so kind of digital drifter type. They were a lot in Ukraine. I don't think it was the best place even from them. It was cheaper, but definitely on the dating side, it was pretty difficult for them. So these are all different components on the scale to consider when you're looking at your options here. And obviously watching this presentation, this live stream, going to interact with it. And yeah, just overall your social strategy, whether you're here for maybe only for dating, maybe only to go and buy property and invest in a business, or yeah, you're looking for networking opportunities, or you're here for quality of life. I did one client who said to me originally that he had considered going to China. Maybe it was about 15, 20 years ago at this point when he considered that. And he, I guess, decided not to go. And then he was regretting it because he said, oh, the thing went up in price and kind of missed the boat and the huge opportunity. That's one of the reasons he came. And he's still actually here. He came maybe 5 or 6 years ago in spite of the invasion, everything. He's still here, and he has an apartment in Kyiv, and he has a girlfriend. At least last time I spoke to him, he did. So he can work out for other reasons when you're here, but just I think it's important to start with your motivation, what you're trying to strategically gain by being in this region, and then to analyze things through that prism. So let's start with Poland and Warsaw. I don't really know at the moment so much about the other cities in Poland. I've been to many of them, but I have not been recently. I've actually only really been to Warsaw in Poland. Been there a lot since 2023. At least I went over a dozen weekends with clients. So yeah, I guess maybe at least 20 weekends to Warsaw in Poland. In the past, I've been to the other cities like Gdansk and to Krakow. I actually did film some content on this channel in Krakow back in the day, but it hasn't been in the last 5 years. Lublin, what else? Katowice, I was in. Is it Rzeszów? Is how you pronounce it? Also in the east of Poland, I was in Olsztyn and Białystok. That's also an interesting city. So this is the kind of entry point into the region. I call Warsaw the de facto capital of New Europe. It was actually a Polish political concept back in the day. It was in the interbellum period, so between World War I and World War II, called the Intermarium. The Three Seas initiative is basically playing. It's a current initiative that we have in Europe, and it is reminiscent of that political idea, which was to create the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which stretched all the way down basically here. I think, I'm not sure if Odessa technically counted, but it was pretty much around here. Definitely Uman, further about 2 hours north of here, was part of that. And that is Poland as today kind of de facto being that focal point. Is not the biggest city in the region. Obviously, Kyiv will be bigger, but you know, with this war, a lot of people from Kyiv live in Warsaw. So it is a growing, dynamic city. It has a lot of immigrants, which is why I say it is the main entry point. On social media, so many people try to demonize immigrants or migrants, but most of the people who are in Poland, in Warsaw, who are immigrants, are from Ukraine and from Belarus, and increasingly from Central Asia. I think actually there are a lot of Indians now coming to Poland as well, relatively speaking. You have a lot of international business that's moved there. So you just have a lot of people from different places in Warsaw. It's a very cosmopolitan city. It's actually, in spite of what is said here on YouTube, pretty much a liberal city, I would say. It's not super conservative. Poland has a little bit of division between the conservative side, and I mean, I just use the word liberal, but it's more like a hard right versus a center right divide or a centrist divide politically. In reality, it doesn't really have a far left party that's successful in Poland. So uh, there definitely is a big difference in the mentality between going to a small Polish town and being in Warsaw. That's something that I've talked about a lot on this channel, because there's the impression given that going to Warsaw, it's some like extremely xenophobic, hard right city, when that's not representative of the bigger cities in Poland, like Krakow, Gdansk, Wrocław, or Warsaw. So it is relatively, I guess, safe as a place. We do have some geopolitical risk with Russia being next door. Russia and Poland do share a border. Sometimes that's forgotten because it is the Kaliningrad Oblast. It was Königsberg in eastern Prussia. So that is an exclave of Russia that borders with Poland. We have the Suwałki Gap, which is a town in northern Poland. You have this gap between Kaliningrad and Belarus. Belarus under Lukashenko is allied with Russia at the moment. They assisted Russia with invading Ukraine by letting them cross their territory. So that is something that's seen as a geopolitical risk in the north of Poland. However, Poland is building the largest land forces in Europe. The downside to spending all that money on the hardware is that, well, warfare has evolved, and we've got the drone warfare side of things, that Poland isn't going to be a leading country. And although they did announce this week that they want to collaborate with Ukraine to basically build a drone armada, so they're going to try and catch up on that. But relatively speaking, it's a big, stable, EU integrated country where there's a high level of English proficiency. It is a big city. Most infrastructure is pretty new in Warsaw, so you get that boost of things being new, not just that it's been there for a long time. And yeah, because it's big, because English is widely spoken, and because the infrastructure and cost of living is all reasonably high for the region, it is seen as the entry point. It's not going to be as big a jump from if you come from the US, if you come from Germany, if you come from France, if you come from the UK, if you come from, I don't know, Mexico City, wherever you're watching, Sao Paulo, or from maybe somewhere in the Antipodes or in South Africa, and you arrive in Europe, then arriving in Warsaw is going to be pretty low friction, I would say, relatively speaking. So a lot of people, it can be a good gateway city, Warsaw, to come to. Does have those big immigrant communities like the Ukrainians and Belarusians. So as I've said many times, the best of Belarus has left, and you will find a lot of them in Warsaw or somewhere else in Poland. Same with Ukrainians. You have a lot of Ukrainians there, and increasingly you have a lot of Kazakhstanis for some reason who also go to Poland. So it is also very clean, personal safety, but this goes for the whole region. Basically, it's not very, in terms of petty crime or violent crime, it's relatively low. Everything is going to be low, especially in homicide compared to the US or compared to Russia, for example. It's going to be like a fraction of it. Compared to Western Europe, it's also, in terms of petty crime and walking around in the evening, considered a lot safer. It doesn't mean that there's no crime, but it is easy in terms of avoiding being scammed or being robbed, which could happen if you go to other countries around the world. Although you should be aware that I don't think you should go to strip clubs in general, but definitely not in Poland, because there have been many scandals with effective robberies taking place, or they get you drunk and then you spend thousands of euros or zloty, the local currency, when you go in there. So not only is it easy, I think, as an entry point, if you're from another EU country, then you don't even need a visa to move to Poland. You just move there. Not the easiest country in terms of moving permanently if you need a visa. So say you're British or you're American, you have your visa-free 90 days every 180. There's no more Polish loophole for Americans. That's been gone since last October. So if you want to stay longer than 90 days every 180, you need a visa. My experience with my clients is not the easiest place to get a visa, Poland, but some people have been able to get it. My other clients got them in other parts of the European Union, like up in Lithuania or Latvia or Romania, one of them as well. So it is maybe not the easiest place to emigrate to if you are, say, an American, but it is a place that will be relatively easy to enter. Now, the downside to that is, well, because there's less friction, because it's more mainstream, because it's heavily hyped up here on YouTube, although that has been starting to dissipate over the last year. There was a few years ago, everything was like Poland, 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 Poland. There are a lot of people who come to Poland. That means several things. The cost of living advantage is not going to be as high if you go to Warsaw than if you go to Riga or you go to Kyiv or you go to another city in the region. The cost of living, like I always have my flat white index because I drink so many flat whites. Just as an aside, I went to a new place here in Odesa this evening to taste the coffee. Also, the vibe is pretty nice. We'll talk about that when we get to the Ukrainian part. But on my flat white index, I regularly pay €4.20, €4.80 even in Warsaw. It's probably soon going to be €5. Whilst, to be frank, if I were in Paris or in Milan or in London, I would pay a bit more, but not that much more for my flat white. To give you a comparison in the region, like if you're in the New York Baltics, you're probably going to pay somewhere between €3.30 and €4. If you're in Chisinau, it's actually not that much different. It's like going to be at least €3.30 anyways, up to about €3.80 I was paying there. A bit of a difference, but not huge. Here in Odessa, even when I tip, it's like €2.50 max that I pay here. So you can see the price of the value for money difference, because that's a pretty much a standard a high quality artisanal coffee, flat white that I get, and I can see the cost of living difference. So you're not going to have that much of a price benefit from going, say, to a commensurate Western European city than Poland. There is a bit of a difference. It's going to be maybe plus or minus 20%, but it's not, be huge in terms of the difference. Now, one thing that comes up that is said a lot, especially one or two conversations I've had with dating coaches in a very common, is they say the dating is amazing in Warsaw. And I beg to differ, to be frank. I think it's good, but I don't know what they're comparing it to. Is it a dystopian situation in the US or in the core Anglosphere? Probably, if they're amazed by it in Warsaw. Yes, it is, as a single guy, a good place. You have a lot of people coming from different countries as well, not just Poles. But in general, when I look at foreigners who are in Warsaw, I very rarely see them with attractive Polish women. And I did have someone who disputed this with me, he also has a YouTube channel, but I'll leave anonymous because he sent me as a private message, not on the public forum of YouTube. And then recently he said, yeah, actually, when I walk around Warsaw, I notice, and I listen for the languages, when actually speaking Polish, they're never with a foreigner. If they're a pretty girl, they're actually always with another Pole, or maybe they're Ukrainian or Belarusian, a little bit more open to a guy who's from the UK or from Ireland or from the US or from Australia, where it happens to be, than the Poles are. But still, in general, most of them are either dating a Pole or they're dating another person from their own culture, basically, broadly speaking. So I do think it is a good spot if you're a single guy, but I don't think it's amazing. I don't think you have the same arbitrage opportunities than if you go to other places in the region that we will touch on. But it is the easiest place to start off in. You're also in a good location. You go up to the Baltic states, the Europe Baltics, so you can go to Lithuania or to Latvia pretty easily. You can also come here to Ukraine if that's your objective. And then you have obviously the rest of Central Europe. And it is a city and a country that has been on an upward trajectory for over 20 years at this point. Economically strong, going to become major player in European politics. Not right at the moment, but probably within the next decade. And often I've quoted the current Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk on this channel because he claimed in an interview that Poland will overtake the UK in terms of GDP per capita, I think a PPS, by 2030. I think that's a little bit of hyperbole. I don't think they're actually going to overtake the UK by 2030. I think it will happen by about 2033. But by 2035 at the current trajectories. And I also had a bit of a conversation with a Polish YouTuber who's based in London saying, no, don't go back to Poland. The UK cannot go any lower. It's like, man, you're deluding yourself. At the current trajectory of the United Kingdom since Brexit, the more likely is that it's going to keep going in the same trajectory, which means they will get overtaken by Poland. And they will have Brits emigrating to Poland. They will need a visa, ironically, as well, because of Brexit. So it'll be even harder for them. Anyways, that's a little bit of an aside. So I think for first-time movers to the region, it can be a good entry point. It's not going to be as big a cultural shock, maybe in terms of going to Poland, or having to deal with more friction because it is a country that has a huge amount of foreigners going there and the standard of living is high. But and obviously, we'll say the risk tolerance, it can be lower by going to a place like Warsaw than going, say, to here in Ukraine. But there isn't going to be as much of an upside, especially in 2026, because it is, for to a certain extent, already discovered and pretty mainstream. So for the arbitrage opportunities will be a bit less than what it could be in the other countries. So that is what I will say by Poland. I think it's a good place where you can land and dip your toes in the water, so to say, as a metaphor, but it is not really the El Dorado that is presented as being in 2026 in the region. If you were to just look at the slew of YouTube videos claiming that, I did do an interview that it will take me at least another week before it'll be up, maybe 2 weeks, with a YouTuber who is a foreigner based in Poland. And yeah, it's Vigo's dad, Jestem. What is the other one? Jestem. I forgot the name of his second channel. It's like a vlogging channel. I know it's Jestem. I am in the title. Maybe Jestem JT his name. So he's originally from Dominican Republic, and I interviewed him for the Vodka podcast that will be coming up very soon. So then you get another perspective on what it's like to go to Poland. So that is where a lot of guys start off. I see. Yeah, I'll deal with that later. Greater. I'm just having a look just quickly at your comments. I will get now to the New Europe Baltics, and definitely Q&A. We can discuss the points that you have raised. So New Europe Baltics, this is the second, we'll say, section of destinations I'm going to deal with. It is a mixture a little bit. All three countries are different. We normally lump them together definitely since the fall of communism, and they were part of the Soviet Union, then became independent in 1991. Even before, we can say, well, effectively, we never recognized their occupation here in the West, in inverted commas. So we would say they were still a country since end of basically in the aftermath of World War One. Technically speaking, as a former lawyer, I have to stick to what was the de jure situation. In any case, we lumped them together in recent history in the last 35 years as being the Baltic states, but they are quite different, and I think diverging more and more. Having spent a good bit of time in the last 2 years, in particular, in all three of them. So we got Lithuania, so that is the closest geographically speaking to Poland. It also has a lot of Catholic heritage as well. So you got Vilnius and Kaunas there. Then you've got Latvia, which has Riga as its capital, very Baltic feel. That for me, that is the Baltic experience to go to Riga in particular. And then you've got Estonia, which is very definitely Nordic in experience. It's very similar culturally to Finland. And yeah, it's basically a Nordic experience with different migration patterns. We could say they don't have as much people come from all over the world as Sweden and Finland, but they did have more regional migration, shall we say. Basically, when they were being occupied, a lot of people moved there from Russia, also from Ukraine, both during that period and obviously very recently with the Russo-Ukrainian war and the invasion of so many Ukrainians in Tallinn. Had a pretty good experience hanging out with them as well. So there you're going to see that, again, very clean, very organized, low petty crime. I would say less discovered and publicized as a destination than Poland, for sure. And I think a lot of this is just good marketing. When you put one word on as brand Poland, and they all rant and rave around and create this hype, whilst you have the Baltic states, and they're talking about Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It's just hard for people to brand. They're smaller. I think that's probably the biggest downside for a lot of guys. It's like Warsaw is a big city, 2 to 3 million people, whilst the capital cities in the New York Baltics are smaller. So in theory, Riga is 1 million population, take the metropolitan area. Well, it feels, I'm not sure, does it feel the same size as, say, here in Odessa? I'm a little bit skeptical. It feels a bit smaller. A lot of Lithuanians claim that actually Vilnius now has a bigger population than Riga. I think they're just, this is the whatever statistic you want to choose. I think they're taking the very low end calculation for Riga and then trying to compare it to Vilnius. Well, definitely I feel Riga is the biggest of the cities in the region and has the biggest airport. So it's kind of going to be the hub for the region in that sense. And Tallinn is definitely smaller than the others as well. So that is the one thing, big caveat to put in. It's not going to be like a thriving, pulsating metropolis of a few million. It's not like going to Minsk or Kyiv or Odesa in the summer, where the population traditionally swells here quite a bit, or going to Bucharest or to even Prague. But I think Prague and Riga, maybe not a huge amount in it in terms of how big it feels. So just bear that in mind that if you go to Vilnius, it's not going to be the same as being in Warsaw in terms of what's going on and the vibrancy, because it's just smaller. They are very uh, tech focused, so there's a lot of tech entrepreneurship. Estonia was the first mover on that in the region, so they became the most famous for it. But I think everywhere in the region is pretty good for the tech industry, especially Lithuania pretty recently. So it's very good for remote operators. I would say that socially, if you are well positioned, because it is these cities are smaller, so it's easier to position yourself than going to Warsaw, which is a big city. And unless you have an inn somewhere, it can, and there's a lot of other foreigners there, it can be quite difficult to position yourself to have make a meaningful impact and stand out from the crowd. Increasingly, huge deluge of horny foreigners who go there, in particular, who are single, thinking that the Polish girls are going to be easy and all this kind of stuff. When it couldn't be further from the truth in 2026. But in places like Riga, in Vilnius, in Tallinn, if you are well positioned, then it is a lot easier, I think, to do business there and also to date if you are a single guy. I think it's really kind of the hidden gem because no one talks about it. In fact, all these dating coaches, in inverted commas, they normally complain about it. And I think that's because in the region in general, girls are a bit more skeptical of the weekend warrior types that show up. And what would have worked in 1996 just obviously doesn't work in 2026. I can discuss that in the Q&A a bit more. But the big thing about, I would say, the dating scene is that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have the highest proportion of models, catwalk models per capita in the world. Estonia is number one. Lithuania is number three, and Latvia is number five. In my opinion, if you're a single guy, Riga is the best city. If I were to choose between Warsaw, Vilnius slash Kaunas, Tallinn, and Riga, I would say definitely Riga is number one. I think it has uh, the best nightlife once you are, again, positioned strategically because they do have a lot of no tourist policy on the better places. Also, a little bit in Warsaw, I did go to one place that was similar. If you didn't speak Polish on the door, you can be a foreigner, but if you don't speak any Polish, you weren't getting in as a guy. Of course, if you'd been a pretty girl and only spoke English, you probably would have gotten in. But as a guy, that was definitely the policy. And it's similar in Riga. And that is great because you want these barriers to entry. As long as you can overcome these barriers to entry, obviously, it's going to be better for you on the other side that they have this more kind of gatekeeping in terms of the better place to go out and hang and make the social connections. It is going to be a bit tougher than in Warsaw. There aren't as many foreigners there. The expats, I mean, that word, I don't even know what it means nowadays. I mean, it's kind of non-integrated foreigner who's trying to claim some sort of social status by saying they're an expat, not an immigrant, or maybe they're just a tourist, long-term tourist. I'm not really sure, but in general, can be a bit trickier because you have lower volume. The cities are smaller, so if you go there without a plan, which I think is what happens to all these dating coaches who complain about it, then you are not going to make much of an impact. But there is a higher upside terms of value for money. It's a little bit better than being in Warsaw for sure, but Warsaw is also a bigger city, so you got to take that into account. Think that the prices have not quite caught up as quickly as they have in Warsaw. Definitely from the real estate side, it could be very interesting to look at Latvia because they also give you, if you're a non-EU citizen, you can get residency through real estate investments there. Will take you a long time to become a citizen. It'll take at least 10 years, in reality 11 years, being a resident to be able to gain Latvian citizenship, and you will need to speak Latvian at that point, but decades time. You're plenty of time to learn the language, you wouldn't worry about it so much. Level of English, very high, maybe a little bit higher than even in Poland, I would say, at least the level of Warsaw. So it's not going to be a problem as a tourist there to communicate. However, like all these places, if you're going to live long term, Conor's Law, learn the language will give you a huge boost. Doesn't mean you have to do it. I would say only a minority of my clients actually go and learn the language to a high level. Most of them, they do go and learn it to the basic level, but it will help a lot socially in terms of not being considered some just random tourists once you can even speak a little bit in the local language. It doesn't have to be fluency. So I would say that it's a great place for single tech-minded entrepreneurs who or people are able to manage their revenues remotely, who don't mind being in a city that is going to be at most 1 million people, in reality a bit less than 1 million people. Then I think that is the region. And especially if you're single, as I said, I would recommend Riga as the #1 destination. So moving on to a country with an even higher upside. The countries I've run through so far, so Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, are all in the European Union since 2004. They're also members of NATO. Now we go to countries that I help my clients win with that are not in the European Union yet and also not in NATO. So not part of the collective West. Well, they are in reality politically part of the collective West, but they are not fully integrated into the collective West. I think that's the best way to describe it, because Moldova is an EU candidate country since 2022. They have set a target date of 2030 to join. But there is obviously, infrastructurally speaking, they are well behind countries like Poland, well behind what you see in the Europe Baltics. So it's going to be a little bit more, let's say, rough around the edges to go to places like Chisinau. Also, Chisinau, first disclaimer, it has the worst architecture of any European capital. I think there are only a couple of nice buildings in the entire city. I think it was hit by an earthquake, I think, and obviously in World War II, a lot got destroyed. But I think the earthquake was one of the big issues that that city had, and a lot of it was built. It was part of the Soviet Union, and it's just horrific. A lot of the architecture, obviously improving as the economy improves, which has been the case for the last at least half decade. Moldova has gone from strength to strength. Chisinau as a city has come on leaps and bounds. It's really been beautified every time I go back there. There's so many new restaurants, cafes. The partying scene is pretty good, I would say. We'll get to that a little bit later on as well when I deal with maybe the juxtaposition with Belarus. Someone mentioned Minsk there in the comments. I see already. I'll deal with that in the Q&A part. But basically, you're in an earlier stage of development. It's not quite in the EU yet. It will almost certainly join next year. There's actually discussion that's come up in the last week or so between the Moldovan president, Mihail Sandu, and the Romanian president, Dan, that maybe they should just unify Romania, be the quickest way to join. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that would be too controversial for the Moldovan public and organize a referendum. By the time they would probably go through all the different stages to get to referendum on unification, they'll probably have joined the European Union at that point, since they have a targeted 2030 that realistically they could meet. So it's a country that's on the up. It has a higher upside, but it's not as developed. It's also city 650,000 people, and it does feel smaller than being, say, in Vilnius, in Lithuania, or even maybe Tallinn in Estonia. In reality, even though it's 650,000, there are a lot of things going on, but it is not a huge city. For people from back in the day going to Chisinau, they would always overlook it because they could just come here to Odessa. Obviously, we get to Ukraine in a minute, but it is not going to be that hugely modern uh, metropolis that many people might be looking for. So they might be a little bit underwhelmed in terms of the lifestyle in Chisinau. However, I will say for sure in the summer, as a place to hang out, enjoy the good life. Weather is going to be fantastic. I mean, it's like southern Europe basically in terms of weather. So that's also something I should have mentioned, is that the climate in Poland, we'll say northern Ukraine, so even Kyiv and Lviv, Belarus back in the day, same thing, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, it is a bit oppressive in the winter. They don't get much sunshine. They're quite far north. It's very gray there, and it can obviously snow a bit. Whilst down here, once you get to Chisinau, it's a different climate. It's a lot warmer. There's a lot more sunshine in Chisinau. This is that there's more sunshine in Chisinau than LA or somewhere. I don't remember. But anyways, there's a lot of sunshine. It will be beautiful weather. It is not a place that suffers from over tourism. It must be basically the least visited country in Europe, maybe if we exclude Russia and Belarus. I'm sure Russia still has a lot of visitors. Not sure about Belarus. Maybe Belarus is the least visited in 2025, 2026. But it is supposed to be the poorest country in Europe, although you wouldn't really think that going to Chisinau. Maybe outside of Chisinau, the other regions, it is still afflicted by a lot of poverty, but it is improving all the time in Chisinau. It's a city really on the up, and for partying during the summer, it is a hidden gem. It's really got a lot of parties going on. If you love electronic music like your Irish boy does here, then it is a great spot. And yeah, price point in terms of value for money, my flat white index, I paid 330 to 380 for my flat white. So not, it's obviously better value for money than being in Warsaw, better value than being in the Europe Baltics. But again, it's not going to be pennies on the pound. It has gone up quite a bit in price since 6-7 years ago. And also the real estate prices gone up. They've now actually tapered back a good bit. So it could be interesting that point of view to think about investing in real estate there. They did make a change in the law where you had to declare source of your income to buy real estate pretty recently. Apparently that meant that there weren't so many buyers all of a sudden in Moldova. So it's a bit about Moldova compared to the other countries I just mentioned. It's not going to have a strong rule of law. It is getting there. It's going to have a bit more reputation, at least the perception of corruption is higher than you see in countries that are in the European Union, had a process to lower that. So I would say that there's definitely more of an upside. If you go to somewhere like Moldova, then there's going to be in, say, Poland or in the Europe Baltics, but it isn't going to be as developed. I would say a good way to describe Moldova is that it is Ukraine without the war. It's the closest thing you get to Ukraine without having to, risk a Geran or Shahid drone, basically. And I'll discuss that obviously about Ukraine pretty soon in this presentation. So I would say overall, it is a place that if you're not looking for the huge metropolis energy of Warsaw or Kyiv, for example, then Chisinau can be an interesting place. I have had quite a good few of clients who've gone. I think it's maybe the city where I've had the most. No, maybe Warsaw. It's between Warsaw and Chisinau in terms of different clients that I've had since 2022, and many of my clients actually hung out there for quite a while in the city. So it appeals to certain people. Again, if you want that huge city experience, like over 2 million, then you're going to have to go to Warsaw or Kyiv in this region at the moment. But if you want the better climate, somewhere that hardly has any tourists and is similar to Ukraine, also get a higher upside, but you will have to compromise a bit on connectivity because the airport is that saturation point with the number of Ukrainians that use the airport to get to Odessa in particular. So it's like really stretched the capacity. They're going to have to build a new airport pretty soon. I don't know what their plans. I was trying to look for, like, when are they building a new airport in in Moldova? What they've done is Yash Airport just across the border in Romania is expanding all the time. You do have to cross the border to get there, but it's not that far from Chisinau. I think it only took me 3 hours. It's definitely 3 to 4 hours to get to Yash Airport from Chisinau. So that is what I would say about Moldova. Fantastic, like summer scene in particular, maybe a bit small and quiet, depending what you're looking for during the winter, but definitely summer, huge upside. And again, a place where if you position yourself, which I have, I think I have the best content basically on YouTube about Moldova for a reason, because I'm well positioned there as well, then you can really enjoy a huge upside in a place that is not so promoted on in general. Most people probably couldn't find Moldova on a map, even in Europe. So let me just look before I get to Kazakhstan and to Ukraine, what you guys have been saying, see if anything I should. Yeah, I'll come to all this in. Seems you're quite active discussing there in the meantime while I go through things. Maybe I go to Kazakhstan next. I'll invert what I actually had in my list here. If you're wondering why I don't deal with the other countries in the region, because I said New Europe is obviously goes from, maybe I didn't explain that at the beginning for new to this channel. So I'm dealing with the countries that are in between basically Germany to the west and Russia, the Russian Federation to the east. I only really focus on a handful of countries, even though I do discuss to a certain extent the other countries in the region. They're the countries that I basically go to with my clients, and I think are the best countries if you are a single guy. I think countries like, say, Croatia, because I got asked about it recently, or well, Slovenia, I think they can be great in a couple. Same with Budapest, I like that in a couple. But if you're a single guy, which is the majority of my clients, they start out single. Most of them don't end up being single long term. Many of them get married, have kids with the beautiful women from this region, including many models. For some reason, meet a model should probably have been the slogan of this channel amongst my clients. We mean catwalk model level of beauty. in general, with the exception of maybe Albania, which is a special case, I'll maybe touch on that for a brief second. I also have some notes for the Q&A on Albania. Basically, those countries are better experienced if you are in a couple, I would say, than being a single guy. Obviously, if you were female and watched us, then also you would have different interests. And since I've only ever had one client who ever paid me for anything who was a woman, I don't focus on that. I focus on mainly single guys. And where to bring you out, I will say the Romania within this, even though I'm not going to deal with it specifically in this presentation. Also, Czechia is also a great spot as well. I would say anything between that, maybe a place to go for a romantic weekend. That's what many of my clients were doing. They were flying to Budapest in particular to have dates, basically, with girls they had met on the trips, and they would meet up in Budapest. It's a fantastic city, I think, to go to, having spent a month in 2022. I wouldn't want to live in Budapest, but I think in a couple, because it's got beautiful architecture and yeah, it's a nice vibe, especially in summertime, like all these places in Europe. So let's go off the radar a little bit, or at least off most people's radar. That is Kazakhstan. Now, some people like to sneer whenever I talk about my branding here and I put Kazakhstan in because Kazakhstan is not in Europe. Well, Kazakhstan likes to join as many European organizations that will let it in. That's been a policy they've had since independence in 91. They were the last country to leave the Soviet Union. Actually, at the end, it's a piece of trivia. Kazakhstan was the Soviet Union for a few days at the end because I think Russia formally left the Soviet Union before the Kazakhstan Soviet Socialist Republic. And they do have a small percentage of the tourists, actually, because Kazakhstan is so big. Like Kazakhstan, territory-wise, is 4 times the size of Ukraine, and Ukraine is the biggest country that's entirely in Europe, right? Russian Federation obviously is way bigger, but 80% of that is not in Europe. So they do have part of their territory on the European continent. They play soccer or association football. Where do they play? They don't play in Asia, and they haven't played in Asia for a long time. They originally, on independence, actually played in Asia. They play all the European football. They had the team from, Kairat is the name of the team from Almaty. They played in the Champions League this year. Champions League in Europe, because they want to join as many European organizations. I remember when I was a law student, because I used to work as a lawyer, I remember at university we had a Kazakh student. I actually went to our wedding later on. It was a super cool wedding. It was in England with a Kazakh yurt. It was in an English country manner. It was quite spectacular, the whole thing. But as a law student, she explained to me that they had a section of the European Law Student Association in Kazakhstan that she was a member of, because Kazakhstan, if anyone let them into an European organization, they just joined it, no matter how obscure it was. So it is a very niche environment. Kazakhstan, it's has a big European influence because about 15% of the population, if you go to Almaty, which was the old capital, or you go to the current capital, which is Astana, in the north of Kazakhstan, Almaty is in the south. About 15%, officially it's like 20%, but I think it's less. So I'm just going to say 15. I haven't been there. It's somewhere between 20 and 25, according to official figures, but it seems a good bit lower, are of European descent. So it's going to be 85% Asian in terms of the origins of the people. So it has a significant European influence, also part of the Moscow Empire for over a century. So they do have, we'll say, a fusion culture in that sense. It doesn't feel entirely Asian, although obviously it is predominantly an Asian culture. It's also predominantly Muslim, although very secular. It's the only country amongst the 5 stands in Central Asia where Islam is not the official state religion, for example. And Russian is still an official language, along with Kazakh. So it has a little bit of the European feel on the Asian continent, basically. It's a niche environment. It does not get heavily publicized in any sort of tourism, in spite of it being a cool place. I think Almaty in particular, with the mountains nearby, absolutely stunning scenery nearby. You can go to so many beautiful lakes, hiking in the mountains. What else is there? Sailing on the lake is one thing you can do as well. You obviously can go skiing in the winter. It's only 40 minutes. And I'm going to try and make it next ski season. I didn't make it this ski season to go to the ski slopes just outside of Almaty, basically up the mountains there. So you don't have the seaside. You do have some lakes nearby, as I mentioned, that you could go at least to the lake during the summer. But it does have a very impressive standard of living. It is a big city. It's like between 2 and 3 million people as well. So it's a bit like Warsaw in that sense in terms of size. So not as developed as Warsaw, not as many restaurants, bars, and clubs as you're going to find in Warsaw. But because it is so big, there is enough to do there, and definitely as an experience, it is pretty amazing. I think personally, as one of my favorite places to go is Almaty. Also, Astana, the capital, is interesting. Also, the good time when I was there. It is most of the foreigners that go there, so we're talking about Americans or Europeans, they tend to work in white collar jobs. So there is a significant, I would say, foreigner factor in Kazakhstan compared to the other countries I mentioned where most people are European. We're talking about if you're European first, in at least appearance, because people who come from Europe or from North America, from Australia, they tend to be wealthy and working in high status jobs. And Kazakhstan has a pretty good impression of them in general, I would say. Maybe not so much if you're Russian nowadays. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of, maybe unfriendliness in certain quarters because of the threat from Russia as well, although it's not huge, I would say, at this juncture because of the balancing of Kazakhstani foreign policy since independence, which is trivector based in the West, balanced against China, against Russia. So they have positioned themselves to hopefully avoid any sort of military conflict. I would say that it's more old school. It's a little bit more conservative in that sense, especially in terms of dating mortars than you're going to find, say, maybe in Ukraine or in Western Europe. But it is pretty open nonetheless. And as I said, you will have foreigner factor if you are a foreign guy. I think if any sort of complexion really is only if you're a foreigner, there's a curiosity about foreigners, especially from from the States or from Europe in general, I would say. Also probably if you're from Latin America. Latin Americans are pretty much popular everywhere in this region. So strategic gateway to Central Asia. Almaty is the no longer the de jure administrative capital of Kazakhstan that was moved to Astana in the 90s, but it is the de facto commercial capital of the region. Astana as well is improving all the time. It's growing. What I don't like about Astana is the winter. It gets bloody cold there, and it's on the steppe. So there's like no vegetation. It's flat, and there's a huge wind. Even October, it felt bloody cold there. So just be aware of the climate in the winter. It's also a lot harder to emigrate to Kazakhstan than it is to come to, say, Moldova or Ukraine for sure, because Ukraine is super easy to immigrate to, and Moldova is also pretty straightforward. European Union countries like Romania, which I'm not going to talk about much today, or Czechia, definitely Poland, and the new Europe Baltics, also a bit harder, but probably Kazakhstan takes the biscuit in terms of getting visas. It's just unless you're a Russian citizen as a foreigner, that's like hard to emigrate to. They just make it difficult. You also find a bit trickier in terms of investing in Kazakhstan. You need to do a lot more due diligence, and only property name is an issue unless you are a permanent resident of Kazakhstan. That said, and I should also point out the languages, because we talked about how English was very prevalent in Poland or most of the European Union in general. Even in Moldova, I would say it's growing in terms of its use. I don't think that you would have huge difficulties at basic communication in Moldova, say in Chisinau, the capital nowadays. In Kazakhstan, outside of an expensive restaurant or young, wealthy Kazakhstanis from Almaty, going to be hard if you don't speak Kazakh, obviously, or Russian. Russian is the main language still spoken in Almaty in the south. Astana is kind of more of a mix because it is the political capital of the country, but you can basically speak Russian without really any hindrance in both cities. In Shymkent, the third city, and I went there, I think it was also fine in Russian, although people have more of an accent, and it didn't sound like it was their native language when I went to Shymkent. So that's also something that could be a plus, like if you want to learn Russian or you already speak Russian, which many of my clients, that was the language they focused on, then you get to use it in Kazakhstan. I went to Paul, who's in lots of my videos, for example, in 2023, and he spoke fluent. He learned it from scratch to fluency. So it definitely was a huge help for him in Almaty. Again, I've also worked with clients who didn't speak any Russian and they still had a great time in Almaty nonetheless because the foreigner factor just overrode everything. And I would say that, if you don't like Asians or Asian culture, obviously, because it's 85% in Asian in these cities, then it's not going to be the place for you. And it's probably a bit more old school, so you will have to deal with some of the idiosyncrasies of people in Central Asia as well. And that plays out, especially if you are doing business in the region and making a long-term play, I would say. But for the shorter term experience, off the grid, not heavily publicized. Kazakhstan is for me phenomenal as a place to go to, especially Almaty. Whether that's in the autumn or the early summer, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and you will be able to definitely leverage the fact that you are a foreigner there, especially if you're a single guy. So, finally, for this evening, as I said, I'm just going to deal with the countries that I actually bring my clients to in today's presentation. We're going to deal with the country just briefly because I've done a separate live stream just 2 live streams ago about the demographic situation here in Ukraine. Obviously, we've gone for the lowest risk, or when I say risk, it doesn't just mean geopolitical risk, or I mean, none of these places are dangerous in terms of personal safety from other people around you, like crime and stuff like that, or been assaulted. All very low in all these countries, including Ukraine during the war, because with martial law, there is not much crime. Crime was way down. It was never high, anyways. Now it's even lower. The government say that they solved 95% of crimes. There are a few terrorist incidents, on the ground caused by Russia, or people who the Russians send as assets here. But in general, the whole region, you don't have to worry about personal safety too much. Obviously, normal rules apply in terms of not being super naive. It's not like there's zero crime, but in general, that's pretty low everywhere. Just think in terms of maybe the inconvenience if you haven't traveled as much or you're not familiar with this region, then we've basically gone through all the countries in terms of it being maybe the most different and maybe the most stressful. And the higher the risk in general, as you expect me to say in this, is probably going to have a higher upside because more people are put off by it. As I said, Poland's so hyped the arbitrage opportunity because so many people come in. There's this concept that I referred to from trading. What was the term of art? Do I need to look it up again? I think I've forgotten the term of art for it. It's something like, comes from science, where basically when there's an arbitrage opportunity in the market and then the more people who see it, it basically dwindles and stops being arbitrage. I think that's arbitrage in general. Once you have less friction in the market, I think was it alpha something is the term of art for it. But basically, once you have a training strategy that works, so we go to this country and then huge number of other foreigners do the same thing, then basically the advantage in doing it starts to reduce. So that's what you have with Poland. But if you come all the way over to Ukraine in 2026, obviously you don't have that issue. Let me just see if I can find quickly that term of art because it annoys me that I don't remember. Was it alpha something? Alpha, let's see, trading, arbitrage, alpha, does it come up? Let's see if pure alpha, that doesn't come up quickly enough. Yeah, but alpha, trading volume increase, loss of advantage. Okay, this isn't giving me the term of art quick enough, but nonetheless, you get the idea of alpha decay. It's funny, I didn't find it, just my brain obviously went through like the AI looking for the information. Alpha decay is what you have, and that is something that allows you to have more of an upside here in Ukraine. Normal caveat, I won't make this a geopolitical or live stream or an update on the war. I have my second channel for that, which I had intended to make more for, but at least now I'm starting to make progress. I had a live stream yesterday. You can go and subscribe to that other channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell because a lot of people complain that they subscribe to the second channel, they don't get notified, maybe because it's a smaller channel. But in general, we have the Russo-Ukrainian war, biggest war in Europe since World War II, starting in 2014 with the Russian illegal invasions and occupations of Crimea and parts of Donbass. Obviously, expanded quite considerably in 2022, still ongoing. Statistically, the chance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time in Ukraine, according to the AIs, I ran it through, says 1 in a million per day. So if you come to city like Odesa, you go to Kyiv, then it's like 1 in a million basically per day. So you stay 10 days, it's 100,000. If you stay 100 days, like 3 months, it's going to be less than 1 in 10,000. So statistically very low risk. I say personally, with my experience of being here so much since the invasion, so about, I'll say roughly 50% of the time, it's probably a little bit less, maybe 40% of the time, is that the biggest issue is the psychological impact because you will hear air alerts for almost for sure. and you will hear explosions, maybe air defense going off, and you may see your building has been blown up. For nearly everybody who comes, that's going to be the extent of it, because there's a 1 in a million chance per day of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So you need to be aware of that. Other than that, I mean, everything basically works. The only inconveniences I normally point out are you have curfew in cities like Odessa or Kyiv that are strict, so can't be on the street without justification from midnight to 5 a.m. Although in Lviv, you can still go out and party, basically, as long as you're not doing anything untoward, they're fine with it. There isn't even a curfew in Zakarpattia, which is in the extreme west of Ukraine. So the main city there is Uzhhorod, but most of you are going to be coming to the other cities. Probably it seems going to Lviv. As I said, if you are considering it, then make sure you apply for the in-person experience. If you are thinking of wanting to have my assistance in implementing that before May 17th, because I have a special schedule and pricing until that date, and you must apply before the 17th of May. So if you are considering coming in the summer 2026 to Ukraine, then you might be living the special Ukrainian edition of the Europe Experience Summer 2026, but you need to apply for it down below. So that is the situation. Your cards will work. You just need your passport, assuming you have a nationality that allows you visa-free travel to Ukraine, and you come, you can change money pretty easily. Internet will work. Electricity should work. You shouldn't even go out because, yeah, only exceptional circumstances at the moment because we're going into summer and Russia's been targeting the energy infrastructure like it was during the winter. So that is obviously a country where I am right now, where the upside is even higher. We're thinking of the post-war reconstruction phase. So, for example, if you bought property in a city like Zaporizhzhia, like some of my clients are, Mykolaiv, or even Kharkiv, then the prices have dropped quite considerably there. Again, this is not financial advice or investment advice, particularly on this version, but you can get the general trend. Obviously, if you would expect that to rebound if the war ends and then it's all reconstructed. And as a result, there's a huge first mover effect here in Ukraine for those who come at the moment. And obviously, you should not come here if you're some dating desperado wife hunter who thinks that they're all the traditional ladies, or in inverted commas, are all sitting here desperately hoping for the white knight, so to say, to come and save them and take them out of Ukraine. That is not the situation on the ground. And you probably aren't going to be prepared for listening to air defense and hearing explosions if that's your main motivation. That's what I'll say is just a general point. If you are a guy who's here, who's supporting Ukraine, playing a role in some shape or form, even if it's just on your own social media, documenting it and spending money in the local places, it's to have that money multiplier effect throughout the economy, then yeah, you'll probably do pretty well socially as well. There is the two types of people who've been coming here that I notice. The people who are obviously here for the business side, that could be in the defense industry. I was speaking about it during the summer. Ukrainian drone sector is already world leading. It is probably the world's leader. Again, Russia is probably going to be number two. It's the unfortunate upside, I guess, of this war is that they're both specializing in this particular field that's of growing importance. You've probably seen what has been happening in the Middle East, for example, even in the United Arab Emirates, where they reached out to the Ukrainians, hey, can you guys basically come and help us in shooting down these drones because we can't keep popping off Patriot missile batteries for every incoming Shahid drone because we're going to run out of them pretty soon. So that is one sector that's had huge interest from abroad. Agricultural industry, always huge here. This is got a country that has the black soil. It's one of the most fertile lands on the planet for agriculture, and real estate investment is the other one. And most of my clients, I would say, still up till now, they have a significant other from Ukraine, so wife, girlfriend, partner, and that is what has motivated them to still come to Ukraine, spend a lot of time, even get residency, buy a property. But I also have clients who are coming here either to support Ukraine, a part of the support effort, either humanitarian or helping the military, or they are looking for the post-war situation and they want to get in early and buy real estate and set themselves up, maybe even open a business. That would be a good time to come. My projection, I made a video about it when what I think will happen in terms of the fighting in 2026 and 2027. I am extremely buoyant on 2027. It's even become more optimistic when we see what's happening in Russia with its economy. And the words of Igor Girkin, who is a Russian ultranationalist who has been part of the invasions of Ukraine, but is now basically sitting in a Russian prison because he criticizes Vladimir Putin, the president, as being basically strategically incompetent. And he said, even if Russia now goes for a mobilization, it is too little too late. They should have done it. He was saying they should have done 22, 23. He said it might have still worked in 24, and basically 25 is becoming almost pointless. And he said, doing it now is basically a waste of time. They will lose the war. So there are good reasons to come now this summer, because hopefully it'll be over by December 2027, not that it's guaranteed. Then you can have the first mover effect. You'll be able to come here and enjoy Ukraine, obviously with the caveat about the risk level. And yeah, I just realized now that I never turned off my air alerts. So actually, if there's an air alert, it will cut off the audio, unfortunately, because I forgot to do it, and I don't think I can do it on my phone. Or can I do it on my phone without cutting it out? No. But anyways, we'll take a risk. There hasn't been an error alert so far. So I guess, yeah, I'll wait until we start the Q&A. Maybe I go and I adjust that just to make sure. I just remembered it now. Normally remembered it. So it's for guys who obviously are willing to come here in the current situation. They're looking at Ukraine normally as a long-term play. They see the biggest upside. Obviously got some risk involved. Also, maybe Russia, if you buy something, property here, invest in the business, it could always get blown up. And there is, someone asked me if there's insurance for that. Technically, there is. But I mean, the cost of insurance, I don't know. If it's going to be worth it. I mean, it's obviously the insurance company giving it to you has to make a profit on it in theory. So, yeah, I'm not sure how that will work in practice, how much you would have to pay for it. I think it depends where your property is, but yeah, that is something you could consider, but obviously be aware of all the risks. You will not obviously have over tourism whatsoever. There's hardly any international tourism. I said I went to the opening of a bar here with a DJ and stuff, not this weekend, but last weekend, and I heard English. I only heard one person speak in, a foreign language, should we say, so not in Ukrainian or Russian, out and he was speaking in English. So there were very few foreigners. If you are here integrated or playing a role, not coming as a weekend warrior, you'll probably do very well socially as well, especially on the dating side. If you are just coming for a weekend, I don't know how it's going to play out, to be frank, but to each their own. I give the advice here telling you should only come if you have good reason, but it is a place that has the biggest upside. So it is going to, fortune favors the brave is an expression for a reason. So probably if you look at it from that point of view, it is going to be the most interesting in terms of a long-term positioning play, and something also I'm practicing what I'm preaching. As I said, I'm here also researching as different business opportunities potentially for the next year or so before I think that realistically the fighting will stop. I mean, fingers crossed, if it stopped tomorrow, I'd be super delighted. But being more realistic, looking at the situation for 2027, it looks a lot more likely that Russia's coming at the point where they will have to at least pause the fighting at that stage. So if you're looking for a mainstream, I mean, this goes without saying, completely safe, anodyne experience, then don't come to Ukraine. At the moment, if you're looking for the potential huge upside, then this is a place that can be really interesting for you. If you're someone like me who's just interested in geopolitics and what's going on in this part of the world, then for sure. I mean, obviously, I'm here so much, so you can tell that it is a place that I obviously am interested in spending my time in spite of what's going on with the war. So, to recap, having gone through all the options, you got the soft entry of coming into Poland. You've got the maximum upside, as I said, of coming to Ukraine, but obviously not going to be anything like a soft entry to the region to come to Ukraine at the moment. You've got maybe that's off the radar for most people being Moldova and Kazakhstan. And then you have kind of, I guess, maybe hidden gems, we can say, because Poland is so heavily promoted, but Latvia, Lithuania aren't so much. So definitely you can leverage that quite well. And as you can see, as I've run through everything, really depends on your risk tolerance. Also, if you're single or in a relationship, what your own income level is, what your own preferences are for the lifestyle. Having spoken and mentored so many guys over the years, it's really an individual plan that most people need outside of the generic advice to get that real strategy nailed down that's going to allow them to take advantage of the opportunities that are there potentially for them in this region. So there isn't a one size fits all where I can say everybody go to Warsaw. I do say that I think the best place if you're a single guy is to go to Riga, but then you see the reaction of all these dating coaches, they trash it completely. But I think that's great because otherwise, if every Tom, Dick, and Harry could just go there and date a supermodel, then there wouldn't be too many supermodels left very quickly, would there now? So that's actually a good thing that the competition, so to say, they fail. But if you're positioned strategically, then you can have a huge upside, especially if you're seeing kind of place like Riga. For business, obviously here in Ukraine, it is maybe the El Dorado in that sense, but maybe it's, you obviously have to factor in the situations, geopolitics, political situation, whether you're comfortable coming here or not. So there's something for everybody, I guess, who watches my videos, who's here in these live streams in the regions, in this region in particular. And it's about setting yourself up structurally with your positioning to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that this part of Europe represents. As I said in last week's, it's not that I'm this doomer that Western Europe is about to fall. I don't believe that. But it is more stagnant culturally, politically, and economically. Hopefully, to go through rejuvenation. I think we can clearly say economically that this is the region, this half of Europe that's on the rise. Well, this half of Europe, excluding obviously Russia and everything, to the real Eastern Europe, we'll say further east of here, that's on a straight downward trajectory at the moment. It's definitely economically and also culturally, it's less than stagnant. It's definitely on the decline. But this region is the one that's on the way up. So you want to be in the rising part of Europe, in my opinion. And I will throw Kazakhstan into the mix. And yeah, you just need to also be cognizant of the value of cultural understanding and of the geopolitical understanding and how that's also going to play into your decision making and what is going to be the best fit for you in this region. As I said, I'm going to now go to the Q&A. If you would like further mentoring or guidance from me, then there are two good options. Well, there's actually three. You can just go to my insider resources. As I said, I got the insider guides there, the language programs. It's kind of more for the guys who are in the research phase. If you want to nail down your strategy for coming to the region or think about it maybe within the next year or so, then we should jump on a consulting call and I will set up a bespoke plan for you so that you can get the most out of your trips when you come here. So not just that you don't leave money on the table, quite literally money on the table, could be in terms of investing, but also that you don't end up billing nomads when you come here. You have a plan in place so that you can also socialize. And of course, if you're interested in dating, that's probably what I'm most known for on YouTube. We can set all of that up with a call. And if you want my in-person touch, basically in-person experience, that is the flagship program. It's called the New Europe Experience. It's by application only. You'll also find a link to that down below. And it could be you with me here with my crew going out partying hard, and you will be able to tap into my encyclopedic knowledge on my personal mentoring for up to a week in a city in this region. And again, if you're interested in Ukraine, make sure that you apply before May 17th because I have a special schedule and price point for the next 2 weeks for summer 2026. So let me just go. Hopefully it hasn't been an error alert in the meantime, I guess. Just before I go to your questions, then I'll come to some new thoughts that I have in the meantime. Joshua says, buongiorno. Buongiorno, buonasera from Odessa. So you're asking about OPEC breaking up. How does this affect Ukraine? Not really sure yet. That's my short answer. I'd have to do some more research. Do I know the woman behind Dating Beyond Borders podcast? She would interview you. She is like the female version of your content. Yes, that is Marina. I've had some contact with her over the years. So maybe that's a possibility. Let's move this here. Camera up a little bit. So yeah, I guess I can. She hasn't reached out to me for an interview. Maybe would it be of interest for me to interview her as well? Let me know on the Vodka Vodkas. Ben says he thinks UCC, which is University College Cork, so it's in Ireland, has a large university population, Ukrainian population. Yes, I think they're all over the country, really. Josh says, does Ukraine have McDonald's? What is the Ukraine diet made of other than pierogies? Pierogies are more Polish. Yes, there's a McDonald's. There's actually a new one that opened near the Potemkin or Primorsky stairs here in Odessa. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they did that, even though they made the facade quite nice, because then there are lots of teenagers eating fast food on the steps. So I guess there are not so many international tourists at the moment, but I think they're going to have to reconsider that when the war is over, because it's not the best planning to have it there. Later, guest Conor's thoughts on Romania and Bulgaria. Buddies of mine said face cards in both are weak and Romanian attitudes are abhorrent. I'm not a huge fan of Bulgaria. I did interview Lynn McLeod about her experience there because I haven't been there so often in the last decade, but my two experiences were not great in Sofia. um, yeah, face cards. I can see why they were said they were weak in Bulgaria as well. And Romania, I think it depends where you are in Romania. I was not as attracted by the culture in Romania as I was further to the east. I spent a good amount of time there, especially a decade ago. Have even vlogs from different parts of Romania, from Bucharest, from Constanza. So I can't say bad things about my time in Romania, but I just had an even better time when I came further east. It is changing. Romania is developing quite a bit. So probably as an alternative to Warsaw, could be something to consider is Bucharest, because it's also a big city. Do I think of the same upside? I think if no, and I think definitely if you're a single guy, I would really be cautious about going to Bucharest, because I don't think it's amazing if you're single as a guy. I had a great time though, nonetheless. But I spent time there almost a decade ago when it was quite different, and you didn't have as many foreigners. So yeah, I would say overall weaker as an experience than coming to this part of Europe. But again, maybe something that we can discuss on a consulting call. James Hudson says he thought that Baltics was too small, but also, yeah. And James and I have done some videos together. It's a long time ago at this point. I actually bumped into him here in Odessa last summer. They complain basically that there isn't much going on in these cities, and the girls are very suspicious of them, and they all go to Warsaw. So it depends what you're looking for. Maybe are the girls more promiscuous in the city, big city like Warsaw, because fewer people know them? Maybe, but in general, I think once you're positioned correctly, Baltics are going to be Europe. Obviously, going to be better from that point of view. Minsk sucks now. Well, yes, that is for sure. Someone says stay home, dating in Kyiv versus Odessa. Yeah. Later, greater, you should book a consulting call. There's just so many questions every week. And yeah, it would just make more sense to figure out exactly where you want to go versus West Ukraine. Again, so much just depends on who you are. What is your background? What do you look like? What's your social status? What's your wealth status? How are you good at your socializing? Do you prefer being in the big city versus being in a provincial city? Do you speak Ukrainian? Do you speak Russian? So many different factors. I would say that Odessa, in spite of its reputation online, I think it's always been the most difficult city if you were a single guy in the country, almost to be in. Personally, I think Kyiv is a lot better from that point of view. But at the same time, there aren't the hordes of horny followers and horny foreigners now, and it's going to be absolutely phenomenal this summer here with the weather. The weather already changed today, by the way, so probably I'm a little bit red from just being out in the sun for an hour with this Celtic skin of mine. So I would say, yeah, all of them are interesting, to be frank. But if you're looking purely as being single, not that I think that should be the main reason to come to Ukraine, obviously, at the moment. Maybe Lviv is getting better and better from that point of view. But Kyiv is also good. It's all going to be good, basically. But if you want to go in depth, then book a consulting call down below. Ozzy says Tallinn versus Riga versus Vilnius, ranked by fingers of blondes. He's just so specific. Well, that's easy to answer because Estonia is blonder than Latvia, then it's blonder than Lithuania. So it's going to be Tallinn, Riga, Vilnius from that point of view. Best in class is Tallinn, most blonde, followed by Vilnius, Riga, more Slavic vibe, plus more Russian, Polish looking. No, I think there are more blondes in Riga than Vilnius, personally. But it's all pretty marginal. And the region with the most blondes in the world is going to be the Baltic region in general. So Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. As he says, Estonia really does seem more like a Scandi country. Yes, it is Nordic in how things operate there. I have my video, basically 5 reasons to go there. I'll link it down below in the replay. I'll link it up in the card in the replay, and I'll also have it down below. If you go and look in the channel, then you see I discuss this quite a bit about how it's Nordic without the Finnish price point, basically, and different immigration. But yeah, it's got beautiful old town, Hanseatic old town. Again, the fact that mainstream, unpositioned dating coaches don't like particular cities is actually a good thing, because there's a lot of upside, there's a lot of potential, but they're not able to access it, which means when you get to go there and you are a bit shrewder about how you operate, and you're going to reap the benefits of that. Again, if every Tom, Dick, and Harry could succeed, it had already begun as an arbitrage opportunity. There'd be no point in going, basically, at that point. It'd be just the same as everywhere else. There's no arbitrage without friction. So that can be access, could be face control, could be social norms, can be language, lots of different things. But in a perfect market, then you don't have any arbitrage. Yeah, he says Estonian Finnish women. Same. Can Estonia provide a cheap cost of living? Then I think you want to say a cheaper cost of living. Yes, it is cheaper, but it's like 20% cheaper, 30% cheaper. It's not pennies on the pound. It's not 1996. Newsflash is 2026. Ozzy says Estonian population 1.3 million. Okay. Best in classes. Estonia similar to Nordics. Then Ozzy says Lithuania seems like the best bang for your buck. Again, it depends. It's a personal decision. My client who was with me the most in the Baltics, we went to all 3 countries. He got on best relationship-wise with Lithuanians. And I would also echo that overall. Gold King's Man, who's a regular, most of you are all regulars here. So his friend has a Lithuanian girlfriend, but she hugs TV. Okay. Okay. As he says, Lithuania is now number 1 on his list, best in class. He lives in Tallinn, American expat with Spanish passport. His girlfriend's from Tartu in the south, pure Estonian. Yes. Tartu was, it's further south than Tallinn. I didn't go there, even though on the last trip to Estonia, even though I stayed for months basically on and off. I went to Narva on the border and I passed through Perno, but the rest of the time was only in Tallinn. I had intended to go to Tartu, but in the end I didn't. It's more a student city. Estonia lame and too small, so they're greater. Well, that's the thing. It depends on your preferences. If you want the big city life, then you're going to have to go to Bucharest or to Kyiv or to Warsaw in the region if it's too small for you. Everyone knows I hate it, including rank Baltics by average English proficiency. These are kind of nonsensical questions, and it's not going to be a huge difference between the English level in Estonia versus Latvia versus Lithuania versus Poland. It's all in the same general ballpark. I would say that in Romania, in a big city like Bucharest, the level of English is even a bit higher than any of those. It's going to be lower in Chisinau. It's going to be lower again in Odesa and Kyiv. It's definitely going to be lower in Kazakhstan. But between those countries, this is not something worth considering. Whether out of 10, the level of English is 0.2 points higher in Tallinn over Riga, it's not going to be a game changer. MLTU says, speaking about troubles in Poland, there was an incident in 2020 when US Major General got drugged in Polish strip club. It was Gdansk. Yeah, these things definitely happen in Poland. It seems a lot. It's come up a bit. I don't think scamming is a huge issue in this region. I mean, the taxi mafia has kind of been obliterated by the advent of taxi apps. You don't have PPL sites focusing on Polish women so much. They don't spend the money trying to promote. I guess there's still, that might be happening a little bit still online. Although Antoine from Sekou, the matchmaker, I watched his live stream last Sunday, and he said that now there's something going on with respect to forcing the PPL sites with the credit card companies that are cracking down on them, so they won't be able to scam anymore. I think they'll just find a way around it. I think AI has now made it so obvious that you can trick guys into spending money by just telling them what they want to hear, and now you'll be able to create video content that way. So I think it's just a constantly moving battle. They write disclaimers. Oh, we're not guaranteeing the person who's real will be the next one pretty soon. So yeah, in general, I'm not so sure that that will make a huge difference. It's obviously good if the credit card is to stop these PPL side. That's pay per letter, where they lure guys into communication, which used to be probably a guy or another a female interpreter sitting there pretending to be the person in the photo. Now with AI, I'm sure it's just all automated. Yeah. So, anyways, the thing was about strip clubs. There was an incident way back in the day with a diplomat also in Kyiv. This is like 15, 20 years ago, where apparently they were drugged and they didn't wake up a little bit. What happens in Colombia with the scopolamine? But this happened a long time ago and it's a very isolated incident. So I don't think scamming is it's not an issue in Ukraine today either, because the scammers, they probably left all the scammer girls. And yeah, I don't think you can get away with scamming a foreigner in a time of war with martial law. I think it might potentially happen, but it's very low probability. Ozzy said, Chisinau looks ugly. I don't know why you keep promoting it. Ha ha ha. Well, people have a great time to go to Chisinau in general because there's such a huge upside, because it's not full of tourists, and yeah, the value for money is great. Food is great. Partying is really amazing. I think in the summertime, and women are attractive. So if you're a single guy, yay bine. Um, but yeah, I've always given a disclaimer that it's like a terrible architecture. Um, Best in class is yes, you're incorrect. Okay, we're discussing Gdansk. Yeah, it was there. It's good for also partying in the summer. You got Sopot and you got Gdynia along the coast as well, Baltic Sea. Let's see. Best class is Estonia has the most English speakers in the Baltics by far, highly proficient. Gdansk and Vilnius city, best cities in the Baltic Sea. Uh-huh. Well, Vilnius is inland, so it's not on the Baltic Sea. Letter grader. Riga and Tallinn, I don't see being that great. I didn't see all those. So this is interesting because you're saying that you've been to Tallinn and to Riga and you didn't see pretty girls. I don't know where you were hanging out in Tallinn and Riga, but you weren't hanging out the places I go with my clients, that's for sure, because it is off the charts. So that is great. That's my whole point about positioning yourself. If you didn't have any friction, then every Tom, Dick, and Harry could show up and it wouldn't be that interesting and get, date a supermodel. But then it wouldn't be very interesting very quickly because there's a limited supply of those. But the fact that you didn't see them means that if you show up as a weekend warrior or if you don't know where to go, then you don't get to see those opportunities. You don't get to go to the cool place, hang with the cool people, meet the beautiful women, which is why it's really good when I go with my clients because we hang out in those places. In Tallinn, my favorite cocktail bar, it should be easy for tourists to find, but they don't find it that much. They find it a little bit in the summer. The winter, they don't at all. It's just like a gold mine. You just have models galore. Riga as well. In Riga they have face control that doesn't let the tourists go into the best place. Basically, I just say private party. Gold Kings man, and obviously we've got our table there and whatever if we're going partying there. Gold Kings man, Bollywood movies, Korean TV dramas, love them filming. The Balkans aren't good, correct? Well, it depends. If you're a single guy, which you seem to be, I think it would be a struggle in the Balkans more than in the countries that I promote, shall we say. Ozzy says he's interested in Croatia. Someone else asked me about Croatia as a passport pro. I said, I don't think that's the spot. I still rank. Why would you rank Croatia better than Estonia? Especially because you seem to be single. I don't think they're in two different categories, to be frank, with Estonia way higher. Artur says, hello from Poland. Just Croatia is the best of the worst in the book. Israel is also. Ozzy says Israel's in UEFA. Yeah, but that's more for geopolitical reasons, I think, than actually geographical. Romania and Bulgaria ruled by the Houthis. Okay. I'm not sure there were ever so many of them in Bulgaria, to be frank. So I went to Bulgaria also a long time ago. Romania maybe a bit more. True what you say. Ozzy says, I wish there was a way to track the movements of the honey around like they were going in the countries. There's yeah, Ozzy, you need to just come over here and stop. This looks like a little bit of armchair philosophizing. Are you coming at all to this region? Maybe outline a little bit. Um, you can, okay, best Gold Kingspan says he knows a Ukrainian with a Kazakh girlfriend. I also know a Moldovan guy who I met in on the tea, and I meet him also at these parties in Chisinau. So Kazakhstani girlfriend. And okay, a lot of you are chatting kind of to each other there. Kazakhstan winters, no thanks. It's tough there in the winter. Later Grade says most places in the EU suck for dating in 2026. Well, it depends who you are because Estonia is in the EU, Latvia is in the EU, Lithuania is in the EU. All right, they're pretty off the charts places. I also think Sweden is good. I'm not a huge fan of Finland personally. Finns don't like to talk. They're very taciturn, and so are Estonians to a certain extent. But yeah, the culture is a bit different. Even if it's similar to Finland, it's a bit more open in Estonia, I find. To ask which place in Poland do I like the most? Ooh, because I've in the last few years only gone to Warsaw, and I went a lot to Warsaw. It's hard for me to say. I actually, in my memory, would say Gdansk, and this because it was summertime. You got the three cities, so I think it's fantastic there. Not a huge fan of Krakow. I was also there in the winter, and the pollution was a bit of an issue. And it's great, but I think that's ever in Poland. And as for Katowice or Wrocław or Lublin, Rzeszów, if that's how you pronounce the other city. Yeah, I would say Gdansk is number one for me, and then Warsaw. Later guys, Chisinau and Ukraine seem better than those options. Okay. Again, it depends on your profile. So we need to work out a bespoke plan for you. So again, consultant call link down below. I've gone too far. Okay. Ben asks, what's the current Odesa flat white index? Well, I always tip 10%, so I paid 250 in euros. So I guess it's 220, 230 euros. So about 250 in US dollars, we'll say, for a flat white. So very attractive on a European basis, maybe the most attractive on the continent. We don't have a Big Mac index on this channel. We have the flat white index. Yeah, let's see. What do you think is the reason for UN dating scene to good? Is it really degrading? Like you have to explain on which criteria, because I don't see many issues in the parts of Europe that I hang out in, to be frank. And I think it's gotten at the top end better in places like Romania, in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. I think a lot of Romanians already like Romania's been in the EU since 2007. It's not like the situation changed last year or something. I think it's gotten maybe a little better in the last decade. Maybe you're just going to very obvious places with a lot of foreigners there. And this is why you don't have any arbitrage opportunity, no lifestyle leverage. Soft food epidemic, vaping making for its ugly in social media. Social media makes it a bit more competitive because they can see their options a bit more and they can be contacted easier than before. But I think more and more people at the top level, most beautiful girls are meeting most of the guys they date in real life. So maybe you just need a social media presence or at least a profile that makes you look representative to your value. So you're not leaving money on the table in that sense, using the metaphor. Vaping, yeah, smoking in general is just obviously problematic, I think, for maintaining your attractiveness. And diet, maybe a bit, yeah, that's true. But you don't have an obesity epidemic amongst women between 20 and 35 in this region whatsoever. Most women are slim. Maybe when they get over 40, it's different. Best in classes, along with celebrations for May Day on May 8th, some Russians in the occupied territories in morning way, two massacre in the deaths in 2014. Fact official. I don't even know why this is relevant. Yeah. And basically on the 2nd of May in 2014, there was an attempt here to attack Ukrainian okay, we'll just for short and say nationalists. And then there was a scene where some pro-Russian advocates were they set up some like stalls outside of the trade union building, which is not far from the train station in Odessa. And then they went inside, and it's hard to know what really caused the fire because there were definitely people throwing Molotov cocktails from the roof. So presumably they were part of the pro-Russian crowd that was in the building, and then suddenly it ignited inside the building. So did the Molotov cocktail get thrown from down below up into the building, or was it the ones that were throwing down that suddenly ignited inside as an accident? I don't know. No one's ever gotten to the bottom of it, so we don't know. But many of them died, that's for sure. And Odessa's never been occupied, uh, so it's also something to remember. Unlike Crimea and parts of further, eastern Ukraine. 27 is the lucky number. Hopefully, that'll be the case. Arthur says, yeah, Poland is a very interesting country, especially Krakow and Gdansk. I agree more with Gdansk than Krakow. Later says, yeah, but there are reasons they don't like it. And I was okay, maybe you're going to private events, but I didn't see anything special in the Baltics. See, this is, okay, I can already tell part of the issue for later Britain. So you appear to be dependent on every Tom, Dick, and Harry finding it, i.e., that it's super easy to just show up, no local context, Billy no mates, and just go out in the center of the city, and you will find the main places with no face control. Because that is Vilnius, which I think has the weakest nightlife in the region. Because it's super easy for the tourists to find all the places. They zoned it that way. They made them all be in the same place on that pedestrian street. There's no face control. There's very limited face control in reality. And yeah, you go to a place and there's all these annoying tourists there. And we didn't like it so much for the socializing part at night at all. My client, as I said, he got on because he was the one who was with me in Vilnius and in Kaunas. He got on very well with Lithuanian women, but when we went out, it was a bit underwhelming from both of our point of view compared to Riga. It's like off the charts. Um, and if you're going there to all three and then suddenly thinking that Vilnius is the best nightlife, that means that you're not positioning yourself. You don't get the intel. You don't have someone to introduce you to those circles, and it's not private events. They're open to the public. Although I made a lot of contacts there that would invite me to private events. Fair enough, right? But that's not why I rate those cities. I'm rating them with my clients where we got the public venues, and yeah, definitely Riga number one, Tallinn number two. Kaunas only has one place, but it does have face control, which, in my opinion, made Kaunas better than Vilnius. My client didn't really agree. He didn't. Yeah, it wasn't the demographic that he was interested in socializing with as much in Kaunas, he said, as in Vilnius, but he did get pretty drunk on me in the night in Kaunas. I remember the next day he couldn't go out in Vilnius. We went back to Vilnius for the Saturday and he couldn't go out. So maybe that's also impacting his memory. But I thought it was pretty good. I went out a few times in Kaunas. There's only one place and it has face control and they don't want tourists. So yeah, you have to practice your Lithuanian. By a few words in Lithuanian were enough. It was not a hard bar, but the fact that I spoke directly in Lithuanian very assertively, and then kind of, I guess, just pretend I can. Well, actually, I could understand what they said back because they just said like, "Wait, there." It was obvious. So um, that's revealing. So that's why, yeah, you would benefit so much from at least a consulting call, if not actually coming in person with me. Later, Grace, the pump for pump beauty, I guess. Ukraine and Moldova, best in the world, even better in Belarus or Russia. Um, yeah, pound for pound, I would agree. Although Belarus, I'm not sure it would almost be in the same category. But I would say Eastern Ukraine and Kyiv, if we include that, it's going to be number one. Yeah, but the gap between that and Chisinau and Odessa is also very small. So yeah, I would agree with that overall. But if we expand the rich countries and throw in Latvia and Estonia, I'm going to go for the experience in Latvia. Not in Daugavpils, the second city whatsoever. I was really surprised that it was a huge drop off in every way going to Daugavpils. Yeah, I'm not sure I will go back there ever again. But that's not true. I would go as for a trip. I might spend the weekend there again. Was it super? So cute. It was in Baltic, not back. Yeah, you just, man, it shows the value of what I provide because when I tell my clients who've been with me to Riga in particular, that all these dating coaches say no, there's nothing going on. Don't go to the Baltics. They're like, and go to Warsaw. They're like, they don't get it. They're like, how can our experience be so different? And I was like, well, there's one major difference. You came with me and not with those guys, because this is the tourists show up with no intel experience, and maybe that's just easier in Warsaw because they go to the commercial clubs, and there are better places in Warsaw for sure than what those dating coaches have mentioned that I've watched. At least I don't know, maybe there are other dating coaches that have better intel, but I also don't really know where to go in Warsaw. But I guess it's such a big city, and those places are good anyways. What they recommend, I wouldn't say they're bad. At least what James recommends, because he put them on his live stream. That one of them I watched anyways. He mentioned the names, but yeah, he didn't know where to go in the other cities clearly. If he's not saying they're good. Zagreb was better for than Telefonica. Not at all. And you really, really, really need, at a minimum, consulting call later, not the in-person experience. It's just like you left so much money, metaphorically speaking, on the table in Tallinn and Riga. Best in class is Tallinn has many secret clubs outside of Riga Platz. Only locals know. Smoke shows. 100%. And ChatGPT will not tell you where they are because it cannot evaluate these things. It needs it to be written down. It's a language model. So if someone hasn't written it on the internet where it gives a high authority, it will not tell you. That's why when I put in to ChatGPT before I go to cities, first I tested on cities I know really well, and it could probably tell you for Vilnius because it's so bloody obvious. But then it's not something you can leverage. So if it was simple as asking ChatGPT, where would the arbitrage opportunity be? So that's again something to emphasize. If there are barriers to entry, that's good if you can overcome the barrier to entry. If it's got friction, it presents an arbitrage opportunity. That's why in this channel, I talk about helping high-level guys leverage lifestyle arbitrage to gain an advantage. So you overcome the barrier to entry, like it being hard to find the places. Vienna is very easy, not as much as an upside. Riga and Tallinn, very hard, enormous upside, right? So that's case in point. James Tusk is the only dating coach in the world who even. No, he's not the only person. University, there was another group of them. I just happen to know James personally. That's why I mentioned his name. And yeah, I bumped into him last summer here in Odessa. He was also in Lviv a bit, I saw. And he travels around the world all the time. And I watched the live stream that he did with Troy Francis. And yeah, they made it clear they weren't a fan of the Baltics. But there's another guy who's Asian, and he said he was going to do day game and go. They went to the Baltics and they were in a group. So I was kind of waiting to see how they would get on, just out of curiosity. I don't know the guy's name. I've forgotten it. But they never published the material. And I saw some clip in a video. I'm not sure if it was his channel, the Asian guy, or one of the white American guys, one of his friends. They said that so little happened that they didn't make a video. They had no content. They were back in Warsaw or something. And yeah, then they said they're having fun in Warsaw again because they don't have the intel. They don't know where to go. They're hoping that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can just show up. Again, what would the arbitrage opportunity be if every Tom, Dick, and Harry who showed up will be dramatically reduced? Because the only thing you need to do is just show up, right? And then you would think the benefit. And I'm sure in 1996 you could have, but it's 2026, so you need to position yourself a lot better. All right. While I wait for more questions and comments to come in, let me give you the regional updates for this week. So we had a high profile prisoner swap, which involved Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, I see Moldova. I remember those Moldovans were part of it. Some guy was convicted for being an agent of Belarus. Actually, Moldova was exchanged, and they got this Polish Belarusian journalist out of prison after 5 years. So that's kind of a big event that happened between Belarus and the rest of the region. Trump's acting ambassador, so chargée d'affaires, because they weren't actually confirmed by Congress, so they're not technically ambassador, is going to quit amid alleged disagreements with the current U.S. administration's approach to the Russo-Ukrainian war, i.e., the fact that they support, well, they lean in their support towards Russia and not towards Ukraine. That will be the second ambassadorial level person to resign since they took over, or in the last few years at least. Poland, yeah, I already mentioned they're going to invest a lot with the Ukrainians to create a drone armada, is what they're calling it. So again, showing the value of what Ukraine has learned during this war, the monetization capability of that for the economy, selling that, I would say, technology or the strategy behind air defense with respect to kamikaze drones. So that is something that Ukraine is really the world leader in. And we saw that play out with Zelensky flying around the Middle East in the last 6 weeks. Another thing that's interesting, because I had my live stream, the Sunday show, about the demographic situation in Ukraine at the moment and what it might turn out to be. There is a little bit of discussion about the EU's temporary protection directive. I mentioned on that live stream. But it seems now that a lot of Ukrainians themselves have realized that they may have potentially problems with staying in the European Union after March 2027 if it is not extended. Now, it might be extended, but this is the first time since if you don't know what the EU's temporary protection directive is, it's basically a law that meant that in 2022, when Russia had the extended invasion, that anyone who was living in Ukraine, basically, even if you were a foreigner, you didn't have to be a Ukrainian citizen necessarily. If you were, say, from America and you had residency here in Ukraine and you left and you went to, say, Poland, then you could automatically apply to stay, basically, and live. So you became kind of like a de facto EU citizen in terms of rights. I'm pretty close to it, not 100%, but pretty close to it. And that's supposed to be temporary, hence the fact that temporary is in the name of the directive. And in March 2027, it'll have been over 5 years of this temporary protection directive. So is it really temporary anymore? And it seems that many of the European countries, also the EU institutional level, they would prefer that this is not the law after that point on which the Ukrainians or the foreigners who are living in Ukraine who now live in the EU, who evacuated or fled with the war, became, I guess, refugees, even though I think it's not a great term to describe people 5 years later. When you stop being a refugee, as opposed to just having emigrated somewhere, obviously at a certain point you have to, it's more a legal status, and the temporary protection record, you're not really referred to as a refugee anyways, I think. So they will possibly, from next March, make the Ukrainians or the foreigners who came under that law reapply for a different status, a more normal status. So they will become immigrants officially. And actually, for getting citizenship in those countries, my understanding is temporary protection directive, I don't think it gives you citizenship rights in terms of if you stayed in the country, and they've been there for 5 years. I'm not entirely sure about that. It might depend on the particular countries, the individual member state. So for maybe Ukrainians that don't ever plan to come back, or you were American and then you live in Poland, you might actually want the status to be changed anyways, because then that would make it easier maybe to get a visa in these countries. So what's likely to happen, I think it's probably a 50-50 whether it'll be extended. And I think they will start to change the status if the war is obviously ongoing as we get close to March 2027. I don't think they're going to deport a large number of Ukrainians back in March 2027. There is a little bit of discussion about men who have dodged the draft and are working or living in the European Union, whether they would send them back if Ukraine wants them. That's not clear to me yet. I think that there might be some legal cases about that, so that might take a few years even to play out. And I don't think it'll be that simple. It's not like they're just going to load people onto trains and send them back to Ukraine. I don't think that's going to happen. There'll be a lot of due process about it, so it may get held up in the courts for a few years anyways. I think they just want to change the status so that officially they'll be immigrants. And yeah, then you can't, you'll have a visa, you'll have to be working probably. And I guess if you don't qualify for a visa at some point, then you will have to leave the country. Doesn't mean you have to go back to Ukraine, but you'll have to go somewhere else if that's the case, because it was supposed to be a temporary protection, not a long-term protection, the way the law works. So I think they just want to, at least there's a discussion now starting that they will change the status at a certain point. If this, I think that there will be a pause in the fighting almost certainly in 2027. But if that doesn't turn out to be the case, I think by 2028, 2029, they'll want people for sure not to be under that particular law. I think the interesting case will be if you are an American who went to Poland, you've been living there under temporary direction directive, you're not Ukrainian, so you're not eligible for conscription here. It's not like the Ukrainian government wants you back. But at the same time, yeah, say you're American, they may change your status. I don't know. Are they going to say you can live forever in Poland? I doubt it. They may have some kind of interim period where they say, okay, now you're officially a special category of immigrant to the country, but by this date, you want to have a job to be able to renew your visa or qualify by the normal channels. I think these special privileges are going to be done away with. I don't think most of these European countries want all the Ukrainians to leave. In general, they're a net benefit for the economy. Of course, not every single person is. Some people take advantage and just, I guess, hang out and live off the state in these countries. Maybe some of them are in a situation where they can't do anything productive. But after 5 years, you would think they will have learned their local language at this point and be able to contribute most of them to society, which is the case overall. So maybe interesting, maybe guys who are eligible for military conscription, if Ukraine decides, and especially if they dodge the draft, like they illegally left, some of those people may be sent back. I think that's possible. But I don't think like a Ukrainian mother of three who lives in Łódź is going to be deported like on a train back to Ukraine because they changed the law. I don't think that will ever happen. I think I think they will basically be allowed to stay indefinitely in that kind of situation. I think maybe men it will be different. And then if you're not a Ukrainian citizen, you came because you had residence in Ukraine and you're a man and you're British or you're American or something else, and maybe they might decide that you get just a temporary status for a year or two, and then you gotta qualify for a real visa. So I think that's just something that's on the horizon. I think because they're changing the status and reducing a lot of the temporary emergency benefits for Ukrainians. I think more Ukrainians will consider returning, but it's not going to be massive numbers. And yeah, after 2027, if they do change the status, I think that's it. I think, as I outlined in that demographic live stream, I think that there won't be a huge number, especially not of single women, if you think that's going to happen, who are going to come back to Ukraine ever, to be frank. I think, at this point, if they didn't come back, there will be a small spurt of them that will come back if the status change and then if the war ends, but it won't be huge. There will be probably a lot more men moving here post-war. So that's something I've tried to outline. Let me go back before I give the dating updates or the relationship updates. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. Let me go and see which new comments we have. Zagreb is better than telling how to go to Kura City. Well, Kura City, that's a little bit maybe subjective. Later, Grace says, so you're saying women 18 to 25 just don't go outside ever? No, that's not what I said. They just don't go out to the place that are super obvious for you to find, for you to see them. But that is the value of, is there no more? There aren't any new comments. I'm just commenting on what was already said before. All right, so let me go into dating updates, relationship, things that have come up with clients in the last week or so that may be of interest to you. Let me see. I've already mentioned the first one. Let me talk about Minsk, since someone said there that Minsk sucks. It would seem so. I haven't been back in Minsk since I think it was January or February 2020. I think it was January when I left. I came back to Odessa from Minsk. I remember I was there at some point. Let me think. I made a video with Angela. We were in Uzbekistan together. Then I went to Kazakhstan, and then I flew back to Minsk. Angela came on her way back to Ukraine. Then I stayed on for a few days. Then I left and went to Odessa. So I guess it was February, March 2020, whenever the pandemic hit. I was definitely back in Odessa. And there was a last flight to Minsk before they shut down all the flights, and I didn't get on it. Well, I didn't buy the flight either, but I kept thinking about it. Should I go back to Minsk? It looks like there might be a bit of a lockdown. This could be the last flight. And then I stayed, and I have never been back to Minsk since. So my personal experience is primarily based on 2018 and 2019. I was also there. I think it was 2016. I got banned free here by the Belarusians at one point as well. And I was there in 2010 in Minsk. And it looks like I was discussing this with a client actually who's been to Minsk many years ago this week. And I was saying, I think the nightlife and socializing life in Minsk is probably now like it was when I first went in 2010. That's how much it has regressed. It is pretty sad to see. The club where I filmed, if you go and look at my vlog, maybe I'll put it down below and also open a card when I go and watch this tomorrow for the replay, for you guys watching replay. But if you go and look at my channel, I have a nightlife vlog from early 2019 from Minsk. We shot mainly over the winter of 2018. I was there with Andy, who's in many of my videos from that era. And also Philip was there probably in part of it. Who's my client at the time who came on many of those early trips to Belarus, who's now just become a dad, with mom being a Belarusian model, who we met clubbing in January 2019. Although they didn't have a long-term relation until later, but that's when the introduction was made. It's kind of funny to look back in it. But that place where we used to party at, it was already gone in 2020 because of the clampdown by Lukashenko on the opposition after the organized elections. That, I mean, he definitely didn't win with the percentages. He even admits himself those figures weren't entirely correct. But the long and the short of it is that so many young Belarusians have left. The best of Belarus have left. The economy has been really badly hit. Young ambitious Belarusians basically all emigrate to the European Union. There's so many of them in Warsaw. There's so many in Vilnius. There's so many in other parts of Europe nowadays. I think the only Belarusian girls who stayed had a husband, basically, who was, for some reason, staying in Belarus. And it's only, I can count them in one hand, really, who stayed. I looked at the nightlife, Rich Cap, that I filmed a lot of that vlog in, gone. It's where Juan, if you're an old-time viewer, you'll remember Juan was, in one of my videos talking about how he met his wife, partying. It was actually at Rich Cat where he met his wife. It's not even a place that I would been where I bring my clients mainly when I was there. I like the owner, Ahmed. We had some great times. I also partied with him a little bit. They were great memories. So yeah, it is what it is. That's definitely gone. I don't know when it closed down. I went to look for a reason. It's completely gone. But I had the impression even 2 or 3 years ago that the Saturday night, looking at the clips on Instagram, were kind of what it was on a Thursday night, which was quiet night. Back in 2019, it was obviously, there wasn't much going on in Minsk. The other place that I filmed a lot of the nightlife in, I think it was called Black House. I think that also seems to be gone. Yeah, the main place, Ayahuasca, is gone. Yeah, the cocktail bar Madman, I think, is still there. Madman was good. And I think there's a new cocktail bar on whatever that is, it called Zabitskaya, that street. I've even forgotten, so long since I went there. So I have so many amazing memories from that golden age of Minsk nightlife as a single guy from 2018, 2019. It is gone. It has regressed back to 2010 when it was pretty limited in Minsk. I went there with a work colleague when I was a lawyer at the European Commission. We went and partied in Minsk for a weekend. And yeah, it was very underwhelming, the nightlife, in terms of the quality of places and everything. Even though people were friendly to us and we had a good time. But yeah, it's really gone so downhill. The best of Belarus is left. Even the YouTubers who were promoting, I think they're all gone except for Andrei. I've said this in several live streams because he's the Minsk guide and stuff. And he helped one of my clients back in the day with a visa, I remember. And then we didn't actually go to Belarus, but he got him a visa because he was like Bolivian nationality and he needed a visa. I think it might have been an e-visa to go to Belarus. But in the end, we just took to Ukraine and we went to Lviv as well as Odessa together. Well, originally we were supposed to go to Odessa and to Minsk, but we switched up and went to Lviv because he wanted to go to Lviv. There were some personal reasons. So, yeah, it's just like occasionally I get questions. Hey, why don't you talk about Belarus anymore? Why don't you recommend Minsk? It's like geopolitical situation, awful, right? Economy free fall. Well, not quite free fall yet, but it's so tied to the Russian economy. It's going to be at a certain point going to be really, really badly hit, and people can leave easily. They can emigrate to Poland and Lithuania. Basically, approved nearly all the visas, unless they think they're connected to Belarusian intelligence or the government. And yeah, it's just one-way traffic. I don't know. Lukashenko, I think it was about 2 years ago, was talking about bringing hundreds of thousands of workers from Pakistan to replace the Belarusians. I mean, like if your president's doing that, like obviously we're talking about a failing state at that stage. So yeah, pretty bad. Maybe the geopolitical situation will reverse to a certain point. As I always believe, Lukashenko is only pro Lukashenko, and maybe he'll figure out a way to leave Russia's orbit and stay in power, and make it a pro EU country all of a sudden, because that was kind of the situation almost in 2018 and 2019. There was a lot more freedom given. He was mainly concerned with the threat from the east, which was like Russia basically ousting him. I remember during the run-up to elections, I think he arrested loads of the Wagner group because they landed in Minsk and basically accused them of plotting a coup d'etat against him. But then when he didn't have the public support that he anticipated, he obviously pivoted quite strongly and then supported and facilitated Russia's invasion of Ukraine through Belarusian territory. And since then, he's tried to avoid to stay out of. Anyways, leaving off the geopolitics and swinging back to lifestyle. Yeah, the few people I know have been there, one or two clients did actually go, not with me, obviously, or under my tutelage, to Minsk. They were nearly all disappointed. Very, yeah, especially by the socializing. It's very limited nowadays in Minsk. It's clear to me that there is way more interesting nightlife, cafes, bars, restaurants, lounges, rooftops in Chisinau, in spite of Chisinau having the worst architecture in all of Europe, than there is in Minsk, and Chisinau is one third the size officially. So that's how much it's fallen. So definitely, it's long gone. I don't think it will be possible to restore it, because at least not within a generation at this point. Well, maybe even a generation. We're saying 15 years. When I talked to Belarusians or entrepreneurs that left, they said even if they could go back, when new regime or Lukashenko changed sides or whatever, they said that they've already set up new business, new life in the European Union, so they're not going to go back. Basically, at this point, they already have their communities, they've already got their businesses. It's like we're talking about 2020 a lot left, or 2021's over 5 years. So, yeah, the longer it goes on, less likely those people are to return. So, and yeah, there was a bit of a phenomenon. Russians were starting to go to Minsk because the mobile internet was down in Moscow. So, go to Minsk because at least you have more access to the outside world if you go there. But yeah, maybe the last Belarusian will just switch off the light on the way out, because that's how much it's degraded. At the same time, I did that video with Galina back in the day. I spoke to her. She says that, yeah, some of her clients actually moved to Belarus. I don't know who these people are, to be frank. There aren't that many of them going the opposite way. And you want to think about the scenario where Russia annexes Belarus, because then if you bought property and you're not, you may have to become a Russian citizen. If you're a man of military age, then you're eligible for conscription. Russia even may conscript men who are permanent residents of Russia, who are not citizens. Obviously, if you're a permanent resident, who are obviously foreigners, as it is. So yeah, it's very high risk investing in Belarus if you're a foreigner and you don't want to be drafted into the Russian military potentially. Belarus could end up in this war. I think it's low probability. I think Lukashenko is wily, just in a way that he's able to maneuver so that he hasn't been directly implicated in having to actually fight in the war. Just he's facilitated Russia until now. So yeah, just really sad to look at the old videos of the nightlife, the life we had, the fact that almost none of the girls in my videos are currently in Belarus. As I said, I think there's two who are married. Well, one I'm not sure she's actually married, but she stayed for her boyfriend, and the other one was married. But the others, any of the single girls, like they're all gone. Every single one of them gone, gone, long gone. Maybe they go back for a trip, but yeah. So rest in peace, the golden age of Minsk. Sad, so sad to see. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, just because I was asked about dating coaches or I brought them up a bit with the Baltics, I think there's kind of a ceiling with most of these guys. Not picking anyone in particular when I say that, but they're basically specializing in helping guys who really struggle in general with maybe getting up to average level, maybe a little bit above average. They're not. The money for them is not in bringing a guy who's at a level 7 or dating hotties back home to date supermodels. That's not the type of people they're helping. So yeah, they themselves rarely get to that level. With one or two, when I think about it, maybe one exception. Yeah, but I think in general they're pretty limited. They basically have a ceiling, and we see that with the discussion about the Baltics. I do remember a very influential and successful foreigner in business and in his social life and dating life in Kyiv, because he reached out to me, met up, and had coffee a few times. And he gave me a lot of insights that I only fully appreciate now, 5 years later. And he told me never, ever, ever label yourself a dating coach. It's super low value for what you're doing. And I understand more and more what he meant, because he was already telling me that you need to position yourself. And I didn't really, I guess, fully understand at the time exactly what he meant. But now, 5 years later, when we see what happens with guys going to the Baltics, the experience I have personally, and then with my clients versus what the rest of you who go and either on your own or with, these guys who give dating advice online say, yeah, there's just like night and day, the experience difference. Anyways, we will be going out and socializing at my favorite places. If you were here with me on the in-person experience, the I almost said Zara experience, thinking of Minsk. Freudian slip, thinking of the golden age of Minsk. Well, it won't be the golden age of Minsk. It will be the golden age of Chisinau, apparently, because that is the country next door to here this summer. If you are planning to come and you want my in-person mentorship, it will be an unforgettable experience up to 1 week where we will go together to a city that we agree on if I think it's a good fit. And you will get access to my crew. You won't have to be billing nomads. You'll have me in real time there with you to mentor you if you have, but through all the culture, all the geopolitics. We're going to discuss. So many of my clients want to discuss the geopolitics, investment, introductions, all that good stuff. And of course, it goes without saying, partying with the beautiful women of the region as well. Which, if you're with me, means that you don't end up walking around Tallinn or Riga thinking that there aren't the smoke shows there, because it is the region, that particular one, with the most catwalk models per capita in the world. So they're there somewhere, but they ain't going to the places that are obvious unless it's Vilnius. And Vilnius is a bit obvious, which is why I don't think there's the arbitrage opportunity there. I think it's in Riga. Again, apply down below. You'll see a link to go to the page about the New Europe experience, and then fill out your application. If you're interested in Ukraine, please do it before May 17th for the summer of 2026. For the other destinations, I guess it doesn't matter when you do it at this point, but obviously before you plan to come, and we will figure out, or I will figure out whether it's a good fit for us to jump on a call and discuss you coming here with me in person, because it's not for everybody. This region, number one, and then come with me and living the experience. Let me talk about a few other things before I go to your comments and questions. I see we're up to, I guess, 2.5 hours already on the Sunday show. I discussed Albania with a client. I have a client who's actually now in Albania, and it's attractive for Americans for one reason, which is that you can get a visa for up to a year. So the visa issue is easy. It is a bit rough around the edges. It is Albania. And he's actually thinking of going there in autumn again, and maybe even setting himself up there. So he wants to be, I guess, out of season. Maybe it'd be good to check it out of season, because now we're coming into the season. But yeah, he says very tranquil. What else does he say about it? I may do a vodcast episode with an influencer. There are actually quite a few channels on YouTube about moving to Albania as an American. Most of them seem to be by Americans. Are they? Yeah, one guy he went with his wife. The other two lads are gays, so I think they're in a relationship. And well, maybe it's only two channels I watched then. Is there? Yeah, well, there's two channels, which is more than I can say for Latvia or for Moldova, because there's no channel there at all, from what I can see at the moment. There was just in Eastern Europe, but he doesn't seem to have produced anything for at least a year at this point from the region. So yeah, Albania may be on your radar because of this ease of visa for Americans. I think it gets a little bit more attention. I think as a single guy, I don't see any single guys making a channel, and I know from being in Albania why that is, because it's not very easy. My friends even were there recently, and they had these high expectations, and they were like, "Wow, when you start to talk to girls, it's really difficult. There's people stare at you as well." And I was like, "Man, it's very conservative." The traditional bride label, yeah, in reality, if they're actually traditional, it's not going to be easy as a foreigner. So just be careful what you wish for. Same with Armenia, same thing. It's rather tricky if you are going there. Although one of my friends claims that now it's changed to, or was he Azerbaijan? He was in Baku. Okay, yeah, Baku is always a bit more liberal than Yerevan. Yerevan is super conservative. It's the most conservative Christian place I've been to. And yeah, you don't hear much about it because when I looked at the lifestyle vloggers who've been there, they said that all the guys who are single, it's miserable because it's so conservative, it's so hard as a foreigner. Yeah, it's just culturally, it's very difficult. So that's something to be considered how conservative you really want it. I think secretly it might be, there's a better balance. Now, balance is in New Europe, I think, personally, in the countries that I recommend, because Albania, yeah, it's and he said he found women attractive there in Albania, but I don't think he's been there long enough to actually socialize that much. I think that's something that a lot of guys yeah, don't appreciate. Hmm. Is there anything else I want to bring up? I have a few other points there, but they're not really pressing. Let me see what the other. I know that you guys don't want to talk about the whole marriage agency thing. I guess if you've come in this and you are interested, I have a playlist down below. You can go look at my content where I react or I review different matchmaking sites, the whole mail order bride industry, in inverted commas, because people have never actually been ordered up in mail. But I took a sample a few times here on the live streams, and also my newer clients, they don't even understand why I even mention it because they're not exposed to this more a legacy phenomenon that, yeah, I made videos a few years ago predicting its demise. And it seems clear that's the case. When I look online, they don't seem that relevant anymore. One of the main channels, the guy seems to be out in Southeast Asia anyways all the time recently. So let me see what other comments we have here. Best in Class says, with the Russian internet bans and such, there will be moved to many to Belarus. That is, yeah, but will Lukashenko actually let them come, or will Putin insist that you can't go to Belarus or can't move there so much? Who knows? But at the moment, yeah, I saw some content about it in Russian social media. I watch Maxim Katz in maybe not every day, but maybe every second day, and he has a daily video. So he's one of the main media producers, independent media, obviously not government affiliated. I'm not sure where he lives abroad at the moment, so he had a video on it last week sometime. So to get around the internet ban, as some influencers flew out there. Two gay guys channel on Albania. Yes, there is. I can't think of the name of it. Smile? Is the word smile in it, maybe? Let me know if you want me to interview them. But there's no single guys. Like I did do the interview, I mean, McLeod, there is a nexus. Like she's actually born in Ukraine and she's in Bulgaria. So I think it's interesting from the lifestyle point of view and taxes and setup. And she wanted to be in the European Union. So I think there's value in my audience with speaking to Alina. But an American couple living in Albania, that's the thing. Like, Albania is not really the spot to go to if you're a single guy in this region. So it would maybe it will just be appealing to a different demographic if I do that video. Obviously, with two gay guys, we discuss the best spots to go as a gay guy, that's obviously going to be super niche and probably not my current audience. So yeah, I'll have to think about how to frame that interview if we do it. Um, mm. But I mean, it was obvious to me that they were gay, but they did actually mention it in the last video about going to some places for gays and stuff. Ben says some places are for financial retirement arbitrage, some are for dating arbitrage, some are both. Albania is just a retirement place. Albania, Ukraine for some people is both. Yeah, very good, Ben. You summed up quite well because, yeah, my client, I mean, maybe he's not far away from retirement age, so maybe he's thinking he did say tranquil. He already has kids who are grown up, so yeah, he was in a relationship with a Ukrainian woman who's significantly younger. He had the 50% rule, so half his age. Again, this channel we focus on dating women between 20 and 35 in general. You can say, okay, 20 to 38. I'm not gonna split hairs if it's 38 or 40 even, but definitely not the over 40 age range. You can still get value, I guess, out of watching my videos if you're interested in that demographic over 40. But yeah, it's not what we focus on here. This is not the matchmaking crowd, because increasingly they're focusing on the older demographics. When we get closer to their end of their fertility window, they're more open to going to those kind of places. Is that Irish guy still in men's friend above? No, he's left. He lives in Ireland. He left Belarus. Ooh, it's less than a year ago, probably, but it's getting up to a year. Smile Abroad. Yes, that is the name of the channel. So, yeah, I see. I forgot to mention, of course, I have the Latvian polo on today because we're discussing Latvia a bit. My number one recommendation if you are a single guy, but you need to have yourself well positioned. So, if you want the keys to the castle, later greater, let's jump on a call and either have a consulting call, which probably for you, it seems like is the best option right now, but you're free also to obviously apply for the in-person experience, but probably you get a lot out of the call already. Gold Kings man says some African American women heading to Albania. Yeah, they probably heard about the visa situation that you can get a visa as American for a year. So it makes it attractive. It's full of traditional women, but good luck dating them as a foreigner. That's all I'm saying about Albania. It's like, as Ben said, it's more for retirement or if you're in a couple, because it's nice architecture in Albania. The cities on the coast, it was Dalmatia. So you have some beautiful towns, seaside, not so much sand. It's a little bit like Croatia from what my client said. And so I've only been to Tirana, the capital of Albania. I didn't go outside, unfortunately. And it's not really a hidden gem either. There's a lot of tourism from Western Europe in Albania. You might think, oh, I haven't heard Albania. Who goes to Albania? A lot of people go on holidays to Albania. I think it was a hidden gem maybe 15 years ago, but even in the last 10 years, there's a lot of tourism there. My client said like there are a lot of tourists there already because now that it's May. Oh yeah, that's another thing to point out to later grader. The ratio of women to men between the ages of 20 and 35 in cities like Riga, Tallinn, also in Vilnius, it's one of the best in Europe. Other cities that are very good are London, Warsaw, Lisbon, Lviv in the west of Ukraine. So if you're one of the guys who was on when I did this kind of straw poll here on the live stream, the Sunday show a few weeks ago, if you're considering coming to Ukraine, and the most common response was that you're hesitant but lukewarm considering going to Lviv, might be an added bonus to know that the ratio of women to men between 20 and 35 is one of the most attractive in Europe in Lviv right now. It's a city. But also Tallinn, Riga, also very good in that sense. Okay, lads, and any ladies who are on. Any more questions and comments? As I said last week, the opportunity cost for me personally with doing this Sunday show, because it's on a Sunday, is going to be quite high because the weather has changed. And to be Frank, if even if I'm not with a client, it's a good evening to socialize on the Sunday. So whether I want to do this 4 hour setup, because before the Sunday show, I was doing these live streams for like what, an hour, maybe 90 minutes during the day. So it was an earlier time, which was not as convenient for you guys who are in the States. And I was showing you what was going on in the background. I don't think I want to do this that style on this channel anymore. I think these more in-depth conversations that we have are a lot more productive and a higher value in general. We do the Sunday show format, but I will do that to give you a glimpse. So the whole idea I started doing live streams because I never did them before the invasion. I think I only ever did one live stream. Was I had the 100 vodka vodkas, and then I had a live stream to celebrate, and I did it on my laptop. So the quality was terrible. There was a problem with the internet, and because I did it for the first time, I even deleted it actually off because it was so bad, the quality. So I was put off by doing it, but now with the phone, of course I can set it up with the camera, but I need fast internet. I need to buy probably a new laptop to do it because that's an issue. I bought the adapter when I was in Almaty in Kazakhstan 3 years ago, and then I returned it because with my laptop and the internet, it wasn't doing it any better than high definition anyway. So 1080p. I think now we can do 4K, but yeah, I need to buy a new laptop. So it's a big investment to just do a slightly higher quality upgrade on the live stream. In general, the reason I started it was to show you after the invasion what it's like on the ground in Ukraine. That's why I started doing these live streams. And I think maybe I did them also when I was abroad, when I'd evacuated. It was mainly because of the war. It was just simple to do. I could speak to people directly and give them my assessment of what was going on, also show people what was going on in the background when I was in Ukraine. Don't think I want to do that on this channel anymore. So, for example, if I go to Moldova, I don't think I want to film from the park and tell you what's going on so much. I think it's more productive to have the higher quality vodkas, the in-depth conversation of that, and like the vlog style that I had, for example, from Moldova recently. And will do on the second channel, on the Inside Ukraine channel, where I discuss a lot more about geopolitics and the war. I will do those live streams from the ground. I did one yesterday on the ground here in Ukraine. I will just put that content there. And then I guess when I go to Kazakhstan or I go to Moldova, I just won't do the live streams. I'll maybe do a Sunday show every once in a while here. And then maybe do more as a winter thing. But anyways, let me know your thoughts and what's the value added that you get from coming on these Sunday show live streams personally? Because I see there are a lot of regular participants in them. Some are clients, some are not clients. So some of you are on some of my programs. So some of them I'm not sure if you are or not, but let me know that good stuff from the business side of things, what value you're getting from them, and that would be all pretty useful. I may do more of them depending on the responses. Okay, we're probably up to at this point about 3 hours and 40 minutes or 35 minutes or something. As I said, I wasn't really particularly, I have lots of other points here. I watched a video with Psych Hacks, the channel, found it interesting. He was talking about, evolutionary psychology and basically dating as a guy if not using money. That was pretty good, the video. I might reach out to him. I think he'd be an interesting guest on the podcast. So I might send him an email, see if he's interested, up for an interview. But he was talking about, confidence, ability basically to elicit emotion and contextual status. And I think that, obviously I can't transform your confidence like that. From the experience of him, you will be more confident. And we can discuss the ability to elicit emotion. I mean, something, especially in those conversations with Philip back in the day, he's in my videos, especially from Ukraine and Belarus. And also he was in Chisinau and in St. Petersburg in that vlog from 2019. We had so many conversations on these topics. The fact that when you're talking, you spike emotions to a certain extent in your conversation with women to elicit this kind of attraction. If you're just flat and boring, the girl will feel bored and not feel emotions and lose interest in general. And obviously, if you're not confident, women respond to confidence to a certain extent. But I think the contextual status is really interesting what he said, and it's a nice way of summing it up for how I help you with positioning yourself, because that's going to also elevate your status contextually. So if you're in the in-person experience, you're going to be there with me. That's already going to elevate your status. And I'm going to introduce you into the social circles in the city that we're in that are also going to help you with the contextual status. And we're going to discuss how you can communicate your own social status, because women cross-culturally are hypergamous by nature. That means women date in general, not every single woman, but in general, they date across and up on socioeconomic hierarchies. That's something that is cross-cultural. So if you are not able to communicate where you are socially, you're going to be a huge handicap. And you can create a contextual status. Like he was giving the example that when he was an actor, even though he had no money, more or less, he had a better time dating than when he became I guess he was what, is he a licensed psychologist? I can't remember. But when he became a professional, actually working in his medical part of the medical profession, he found it harder to date, even though he had way more money, because he was basically an actor in his late 20s, and he was like the star of a very small production, but he was still the main uh, actor in that show, and he had just huge status in that small context. The rest of his life, he didn't have any status, but when he was meeting women through being an actor, he found it really, really easy to date. And then when he ironically became a lot wealthier as a doctor, he didn't have as much contextual status. He was just in social environments where he wasn't as high up relative to that context. So I thought it very interesting and something that I definitely can relate to. I think it's very true. I think I think Paul was in those videos with me. He was in Kazakhstan and we were in Latvia together. We were in else together. I think they were the two places. He said, yeah, we're like local VIPs, especially in Riga. I think, yeah, were we also in Kazakhstan, Almaty? I think later on, I think with my other clients with me. Yeah, we were like local VIPs, but with Paula was in Riga because we used to hang out at certain places, and everybody would know who we were very quickly. Also, Paul spoke Russian. A lot of people speak Russian in Riga, but half the city. So yeah, we're like local VIPs. Contextual status. I show up. You're with me. It's a game changer. That's just what it is. It's also, as in Paul's word, a game changer that he learned Russian as well, to fluency. Best in class says. Estonia has higher percent. What have you heard about Transnistria? I hear it is in bad shape, brink of collapse, not getting as much Russian help. Any chance of being reintegrated into Moldova? Yes, that is, with my contacts in Chisinau, the Transnistrian authorities have been reaching out subtly for over a year to the government, central government in Chisinau, interested in slowly reintegrating back into Moldova. And it makes sense, like the GDP per capita of Tiraspol, of the Transnistrian region versus the rest of Moldova. It used to be wealthier, basically, in Transnistria. Now it's like a fraction of the rest of Moldova. Moldova's booming and they're regressing. Their industry is collapsing. So at a certain point, and they've hugely population, well, all of Moldova, a lot of people have left. So I can't say, in a lot of countries in the region over the last 30 years, a lot of people have. Same with Latvia, same with Estonia, same with Lithuania, for example, and obviously Ukraine as well. So that's example, but it's even more visible with Transnistria nowadays, especially young people, is they just don't have any opportunities there. So yeah, the Russians are too far away. Okay, there are Russian troops stationed in Transnistria, but they're actually local Transnistrians who serve in the Russian forces. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to rotate in and out of the country easily. So at a certain point, I think those Transnistrian soldiers in the Russian army, they may be just saying, Disvedanya and tearing up those contracts, and they were no longer in the Russian army, and with or without Moscow's acquiescence to it, and it will be uh, de facto back under Chisinau's control. It's obviously de jure Moldovan territory legally there. The other option that was floated many years ago, this is before it was after the Orange Revolution, true enough, but before the Euromaidan Revolution, was that Transnistria would actually just join Ukraine, which probably would have been good for Moldova because it would have taken this pro-Russian territory that plays a certain amount of influence in Moldova and put it in Ukraine, where it would be just a small, you know, potentially rebel province, but isolated, and Russia wouldn't be able to help it anyways. So yeah, that probably would have worked out better. Would have meant that Moldova would accelerate even quicker towards the European Union and its economic development. But it is what it is. They don't even need to sort it out before they join the EU. If we look at precedent, the precedent being that Cyprus joined the EU and they still have division on the island. They just suspended EU law known as the acquis communautaire in the northern part of Cyprus that's under Turkish Cypriot control. The big thing is, of course, it's Russia. So it's a different kettle of fish than it being Turkey, being the occupying force, shall we say, or the forces to which they are loyal to in the rebel province. So yeah, I think it'll get sorted out in any case. Maybe if transitions know that it's holding up the EU accession process, that will just give them leverage, the elite there. But if it's not holding it up, they're going to basically want to do what the Turkish Cypriots do, which is vote in favor of a peace deal and unification. But unfortunately for the Turkish Cypriots, the Greek Cypriots voted against it. So the problem was never resolved. Not until now. And that was already, we're talking about at this stage almost 25 years ago where they could have resolved it. But anyways, c'est la vie. The Greek Cypriots, from that I spoke to, in general, seem to think that they'd be in a better position to leverage more concessions from both Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots if they waited until after they joined the European Union. And the EU didn't make it conditional, sorting out the conflict before they could join. So yeah, they miscalculated pretty badly considering where we're at, well over 20 years later. So yeah, I think Transnistria, I'm not interested to go personally at the moment. I don't think it fits in with my channel going to Tiraspol. Like I could go to Belts in northern Moldova, which is it's about the same side and probably just as poor. So if you want to see that, and that's pretty limited, but it doesn't have any of the communist paraphernalia, I guess, or the Transnistrian paraphernalia, Pridnestrovia. But yeah, I don't think it's that interesting, Tiraspol lifestyle-wise. And how did you go to a place that's a separatist entity? Yeah, with the current geopolitical situation, I'm just not interested in going there. There are some nice places along the river, and they're right on the border, either still in Moldovan controlled territory or right on the line of contact, or they're in the Transnistrian part, which kind of sucks because that I would go and film, but not going to Tiraspol. I see very little point in going there at the moment. Chisinau is where it's at, and somebody goes from Tiraspol to come down to Chisinau anyways, for university, for partying, just a lot more going on. Yes, the alpha decay was the term I see where I searched it. Okay, gentlemen, do we have any more questions or comments? On today's live stream, the Sunday show, we ran through the options that I help my clients with. Of course, there are others like Bucharest and going to Prague, for example, that I'm also open to with the right client, even though I haven't brought clients there so far. I've been bringing clients since 2022 to Astana and Almaty in Kazakhstan, to here in Ukraine, even with this Russia-Ukraine war. So Odesa, the options are Odesa, Kyiv, Lviv, Chernovtsi, Uzhhorod. You got Warsaw in Poland. I'm also hoping to go into Gdansk or somewhere else in Poland. Just that one client wanted to go to Gdansk and then seems to have changed his mind. We went to Almaty together, and maybe we've also been to Chisinau and to Riga and to Warsaw. So I guess maybe at some stage we'll go together to Gdansk. You got Vilnius and Kaunas in Lithuania. You've got Estonia and Tallinn. You got Tallinn in Estonia and Riga in Latvia. Those are the cities that I bring my clients to. Didn't leave any out. Chisinau, Moldova should have been in there as well. My top tips are, if you want to leverage lifestyle arbitrage, Riga in Latvia, Almaty in Kazakhstan, Chisinau in Moldova, and Lviv in Ukraine. But if it's summertime, also consider Odessa here. It's going to be absolutely sensational here this summer with the beach clubs. It's going to be perhaps, and fingers crossed, it will really be the last summer during the Russo-Ukrainian war. So you will not have the hordes of horny foreigners, the tourists running up and down Arcadia and through the center here on Primorska Boulevard, pestering all the girls. You won't have those guys around, and it makes it a very different scene. So consider all that. as your options. Again, it depends on your risk level, as we run through in the presentation. The easy gateway is Warsaw. I actually only really focus on going, hanging out at Ukrainian, Belarusian places in general with my clients when we go there. I tried all the Polish places. We were connected. I went to cool private parties as well with a lot of the young elite. Well, young to middle age. I mean, the girls were the girls were like around 25, I guess, 20 to 25, and the lads were 30 to 45, we'll say. So does that make it a young elite? I guess they were successful entrepreneur types with the hottie young models. Well, the hottie models in their mid 20s, we'll say. And I experienced all of that, but I think with clients, they're just more interested in the Belarusian and Ukrainian experience there. So that's normally where we go to. We might go to one or two Polish places. And that is what it is like in Warsaw. Still a great city, but again, it's so well known, you don't have as much arbitrage opportunity. People will find them in clubs. There are some good options that are off the beaten track as well, because it's a big city. It's a big city vibe. Compare that to going to Riga. The nightlife is corralled for the tourists in one place, for the locals in another. Perfect. You've got the highest percentage of models in the world, basically in these countries. If you speak Russian, of course, it's going to be an added bonus in Riga, a little bit maybe in Tallinn. But in general, level English is good in both Poland and in Europe Baltics. Infrastructure is pretty good. Price point attractive, not pennies on the pound, not cents on the dollar, not a passport pro region. And yeah, if you like leggy bonds, I mean, this is the part of the world where it's got the best access once you have yourself positioned, you know where to go, you have a good crew to go with. It's absolutely sensational, I would say, as a spot. Again, it's not a huge city, so it's not going to be Warsaw. It's not a 2 or 3 million person city. But if you are fine with that as an experience or as a long term positioning, then definitely hit me up for a consulting call, or if you want me to help you implement your strategic plan in person, have unforgettable up to a week together, then you can apply for the Europe experience. Again, all the links are down to my website in the description to this live stream. You also have my email address, Conor@conorklein.com. So you can shoot me an email there as well. Other places, I think summertime, Chisinau, Ukraine without the war, absolutely great. It's not for architectural sightseeing. Let's be clear about it. It is not a tourist destination for that main reason. Also, and I brought up not in the last video, which is probably the best video about going to Moldova, I think, on YouTube, at least recently. But I think it was maybe 2 summers ago, because it was Adriano who said it in my video, my friend, that, yeah, if you're a familiar face, then it's very good in Chisinau. So you're not coming just once, you know, in a blue moon and no one knows you and you're going to hang out in the most obvious places. It is easy to find the main party, but there are lots of electronic music parties going on every weekend, really vibrant nightlife. But probably people are a little bit wary of, you know, the weekend warrior types, which is, again, great if you overcome that barrier to entry. That's why you have arbitrage. Again, a frictionless market doesn't present any arbitrage. A market with friction presents arbitrage opportunities, and these ones that you can gain an advantage with once you are able to leverage the lifestyle, which is what I help it, well, leverage the lifestyle arbitrage, which is what I help my clients with in general. This is the real value added, not just the mentorship, but also using that mentorship. Mentorship is the vehicle by which I help you gain an advantage. So that's what I'll say about Moldova. Of course, not everybody's going to be in Almaty in Kazakhstan because it's 85% Asian, but I think it's a phenomenal place. It's great in the winter if you want to go skiing, and it's also good. I think it's a little bit too hot at the height of the summer, but I think right now, the next month, up until maybe mid-June, it's going to be a great time to go there, and again in the autumn. So hopefully I'm going to make it back pretty soon in the next month or so, fingers crossed, although I've had to postpone it a few times, going back to Almaty. And yeah, then we got the higher risk, and it's not just about like danger per se, but it's going to be, we'll say, you go from comfortable to least comfortable in the region. So super comfortable, Warsaw. I guess that's why all these guys promote it. Least comfortable going to be come to Ukraine. Obviously, be cognizant, Norman caveat about the threat level. Again, if it's statistically low, the main issue, my experience here, is the psychological impact. You need to be prepared for air alerts, even at the stop. How long did it take me in the live stream to turn off the air alerts on my phone so it doesn't get unmuted again on a live stream like it was a few months ago? You're going to have to be prepared for hearing air defense, maybe seeing something blown up. Statistically, 1 in a million per day, risk in the wrong place at the wrong time. May happen, but again, statistically very low. Upsides, you get to come to Ukraine during this tumultuous geopolitical time. For some people, and they are amongst my clients, some of my clients are amongst them, that's actually a reason to actually come to Ukraine, help Ukrainians, support them at this time of need, whether it's humanitarian side, the military side, are just documented and they have a genuine interest. They're going to spend some time here. The main ones that are coming in the last year are mainly focused on first mover advantage. So they're looking at investing in real estate, may also into sectors for defense and agriculture. And yeah, obviously there's a huge upside post-war, the reconstruction boom. I've already gone through that. Nightlife and socializing, you don't have the foreign men running around. So you will be a novelty here in Ukraine for sure. And it'll be great during the summer in Odessa. Also, Lviv, very good. And Kyiv is always big city, a lot going on. So from that point of view, from the socializing, also going to be a very interesting time to be here. And if you apply for the in-person experience before May 17th, there is a special schedule and pricing, as I mentioned a few times on this live stream. So you need to go and apply. Just go and apply now if you're interested in Ukraine in summer 2026, because after May 17th, you won't be grandfathered in anymore on that particular structure. So do we have any more questions or comments? Because So I realize why it is. Why are the comments always in German on these live streams? I have my phone in German because I used to live in Munich and I just like to have my phone in German just to remind me of the German language a little bit. And I can obviously understand the level on my phone. So that must be why it automatically auto translates here all my comments, all your comments into German, which is very funny when I read it. But, das Wetter in Prague is momentan großartig. So in Prague at the moment, the weather is great, says Goldman. Gold King's man here. Best in classes. Cheers, Conor. Thanks for the chat. My pleasure. You seem to, I don't know, have we communicated in person? Because you can write me a message since you're using a name that doesn't tell me your first name. But maybe you're already all set up there in Tallinn. But I know that you're pretty active also on the other channel on the geopolitics. Okay, any final questions, comments? For those of you who answered that you are considering Ukraine with respect to Lviv, definitely apply and we can see if it's a good fit to come at that time. If you were like later greater and you've been basically wasting your time in the Baltic states, New Europe Baltics, because you don't have a proper strategy, you're not able to position yourself, and you think it sucks, like definitely jump on a strategy call with me, a consulting call. You find the link to that down below. That will be a massive and humongous value added because metaphorically speaking, and maybe literally, you're leaving money on the table. Because also real estate is attractive in Riga. I think I don't know your nationality later, Greg. If you're American, you want a visa for the Schengen area, it can also be very interesting to invest in real estate in Latvia. I did that video with Karina about 18 months ago at this stage about investing in real estate, and that waterfront property, the one that the people from the Emirates are developing, is coming along as well. So in a few years, it's very possible that it will just be pretty much mainstream, also Riga. Would you said that? I remember I went to Warsaw. I went with Guillaume, who's my French friend, who was in some of my vlogs from before the invasion here in Odessa. He came and partied a few times with me. But when was it with Guillaume in Warsaw? It's definitely over 10 years ago. We went to Warsaw. We went to Berlin for New Year's. We've been in Kyiv, and I actually took the train. He wasn't with me, actually, when we went to Warsaw. That's right. They flew to Berlin, and I actually flew to Warsaw. And for some reason, I came to Warsaw, and I took the train the next day to Berlin to party with them on New Year's Eve. But for the Warsaw part, I had a friend who was a diplomat in Warsaw, so he told me where to go. We went out, and man, it was so underwhelming going to Warsaw. It's more than 10 years ago compared to being in Kyiv. It felt like I'd gone to somewhere that wasn't as developed because the places to go out weren't as impressive as they have been in Kyiv, and obviously Berlin has its own special atmosphere. But now, yeah, things are very different, I have to say. So that was the experience back in the day of going to Warsaw. That's how much it's improved, economically developed, socially developed. But again, it is mainstream. That was the thing, mainstream. Even then, even though it wasn't as impressive, there were so many Italian guys who were day before New Year's Eve were all there to chase the Polish girls. So yeah, even though it wasn't as mainstream as today, it was already creeping in as a mainstream place to go to. So yeah, Riga now, I can't really call it hidden gem, but underrated, underrated. But again, you need proper positioning. It's not a place every Tom, Dick, and Harry can just show up to. And I'm perfectly happy about that. I don't want to go somewhere where Tom, Dick, and Harry literally can leave with a supermodel or live a dream lifestyle. It means there's no friction. It'd actually be kind of weird, even with a frictionless, that they would be living with the supermodel. But yeah, there aren't those advantages in terms of just showing up. It's not 1996, it's 2026. I'm sure every Tom, Dick, and Harry from the West could literally show up in 1996 and had their pick of the litter, so to speak, or they would have been seen as, hotshot, the girls with America, and wanted to, yeah, marry a guy for a passport and move, whatever. But that's increasingly rare. There obviously still are some girls like that, the passport pros, the green card girls, but or even girls that don't realize they're green card girls, and then they get to the US and they got their green card, and then suddenly, yeah, they just dumped the poor schmuck who facilitated their relocation when they realize they can get a lot better in their eyes once they're already in situ. So yeah, these are the opportunities that are possible in this region. That's why I rate it, especially if you're a single guy. This is the part of the world I think it's your best placed to succeed in. However, it's not a passport pro country, territory. It's not pennies on the pound, cents on the dollar. A little bit more like that maybe in Ukraine, but obviously we have different issues that keep the passport pros away here for now. And yeah, I don't think in any of these places, from the dating point of view, since I was asked a lot of dating questions on this live stream, the girls are not desperate, but there just aren't as many foreign guys here as there used to be. So I already went in detail into demographic situation on that live stream. If you're very interested in that, go watch that live stream because it's definitely a unique piece of content here on YouTube. We go deep into the statistical trends with demographics in this country because after this war is over, a lot of those dodgy people are going to lie to online saying there are no men in Ukraine, come to Ukraine. But I guess I will get more business as a result because people will just be more interested in Ukraine out of hope than anything else. But it won't be the case. This is the reality, at least from what we can tell right now. Okay, I've probably been on for 3 hours at this point, and that's kind of where I normally sign off on these live streams. So again, go check out the links down below. I think the best option for most of you is a consulting call at this point to strategize and get yourself set up so you don't leave money on the table, either literally or figuratively when you come to this region. If you want my in-person mentorship, it'll be unforgettable, up to a week together, then apply for the New Europe in-person immersion. And on that note, I will sign off. I have any parting comments? Yes, I didn't talk so much about Odessa. I mean, it's summer now. It was beautiful weather today. As I said, I mentioned the last live stream, there's going to be a new place opening next weekend on the Saturday, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, your Irish boy here wants to enjoy himself. Not sure I'll even be in a good state to have the Sunday show. In any case, next weekend, next Sunday, I will decide that during the week. I'll also make a decision about whether I want to do this once a month going forward. Maybe I'll switch it another day. But for sure, if you want to see more live streams from Ukraine, be subscribed with the notification bell struck there for the updates, because I will film live streams from the street on the second channel. And yeah, it should be good. I mean, I never told you about the flat white index. The cafe I went to this evening, I went to relatively new place to hang out. I don't want to say too much about it, but yeah, it's very cool. Vibe, coffee. So you don't even need to drink alcohol if you don't want to drink alcohol. I mean, you can drink alcohol there as well, I guess. But yeah, very interesting socially, I will say. Lots of attractive, young and trendy people there. And yeah, it was super cool. It's definitely a new bit of a scene. One of my friends, I'd actually spotted it because I was walking around. And yeah, one of my friends, she told me about it there a few weeks ago. So I went to hang out a bit today on the Sunday evening. Again, same Sunday evening, opportunity cost is going to be pretty high. And I want to also film a bit and be able to show you the content from here on the ground. So again, I'll decide on this Sunday show format. Drop me a comment or drop me an email, saying if you get particular amount of value from this Sunday show as a format. If you want to dive deeper, obviously we can discuss that in the consulting call. Is probably the best place to do so, and we will figure out your bespoke plan for coming here to New Europe in the summer of 2026 or beyond. Anyways, on that note, I'm going to sign off from Odessa Mama. It promises to be, in spite of the Russo-Ukrainian war, an absolutely phenomenal summer 2026. Unforgettable here from the shores of the Black Sea. I will see you in some other content on this channel. We will have a new video from Ukraine, actually about summer 2026. That was mainly filmed in summer 2025, but I've added on to it a couple of interviews there that should be interesting as well. And that video could be done maybe at the end of this week. I think it's more likely going to be the week after. And I will have those two Vodka Vodcasts, one with JT and with Alina McLeod coming up on the channel. That will also be edited up in the next few weeks. And then I will be obviously filming new content from my travels when I go to the cities that I featured on today's live stream and also here in Ukraine. So, well, Slava Latvi, I should say. So glory to Latvia and Slava Ukraini, do перемоги. And I wish you an absolutely phenomenal summer 2026 in this region, whichever option you go for. So ciao, ciao for now from Odessa Mama in Ukraine.